Chapter 39. AO Tianxuan officially recruiting. Welcome new and old friends. VIP group 1539-53979. Restricted to VIP users. Normal readers group 183-7135. Accessible to registered Chidian users. Looking for recommendation tickets and members to click on it. After reading it, can you please help me bookmark it? Thank you. Xiao Jifei came out by himself. Are you sure you didn't see Xiang Hao when you came out? Xiao Ding asked. I'm sure. Humph. Since he didn't come out, he must have died in there. Otherwise, I would have sensed his presence when I came out. Xiao Jihan said with unconcealable excitement on his face. Although Xiao Jihan really wanted to use his cultivation as a grade 7 martial master to ruthlessly stomp Chun Hao into minced meat in front of everyone, Chun Hao's death in the Origin Spirit Cave wasn't a bad thing. After all, although Chun Hao's cultivation wasn't as good as his, he somehow made him feel a trace of fear from the depths of his heart, especially in the Yuan Ling Cave this time. Xiao Ding and Old Man Xiao didn't know what to do. Xiao Gang and the rest were frowning as they considered whether Xiao Jihan's words were true. All the Xiao clan disciples in the martial arts practice field were holding their breaths with fear in their hearts. Suddenly, a voice drifted out from the Yuan Ling Cave. Xiao Jihan, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. If you don't die, how can I die? The voice wasn't loud and was faint, but it was filled with boundless indifference and arrogance that came from the depths of one's bones as it drifted into everyone's ears. What surprised everyone was that there weren't any energy fluctuations at the Yuan Ling Cave's entrance. Instead, a slightly thin but tall figure walked out of the Yuan Ling Cave as if he was taking a stroll. There was no icy cold air, no origin energy enveloping him, and he wasn't ejected. Just like that, he walked step by step towards Elder Xiao, Xiao Ding, and the others under the gazes of everyone present. Only his pitch-black eyes contained a wisp of faintly discernible light, and anyone that looked into his eyes would have the feeling as if they'd fallen into another world. That world was filled with endless ice and snowstorms. Stinking brat. Elder Zhao's furrowed brows immediately relaxed. Who else could it be other than Chun Hao? Sensing the completely restrained aura on Chun Hao's body, Elder Xiao was astounded in his heart. His aged and ordinary face couldn't conceal the joy, shock, and excitement in his heart, and his voice carried a trace of trembling as he called out to Chun Hao. How is this possible? Xiao Ding was so excited that his entire body was trembling. The gaze he used to look at Chun Hao was not only filled with shock and excitement, but also incomparable envy and jealousy. Other than the two of them, Xiao Gang and the other 6 elders, as well as the 4 guest elders, as well as all the Xiao family disciples in the martial arts practice field, were all deeply puzzled. They simply could not understand why Old Man Xiao and the Patriarch were so shocked when they saw Chun Hao. The aura on Chun Hao's body was simply incomparable to Xiao Jihan's. They were only astonished and shocked at how Chun Hao had not caused any disturbance when he walked out of the Primordial Spirit Cave, and how he had walked out so easily. When Xiao Jihan saw Chun Hao miraculously walk out, especially when he saw Chun Hao's gaze, even his voice trembled. It was a fear that came from the depths of his heart after being repeatedly shocked by Chun Hao. However, this fear was immediately suppressed by Xiao Jihan as he roared, I'm already a grade 7 martial master. Grade 7 martial master. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Afraid of me? Hee, did I say you were afraid of me? Oh, I understand. It seems like you're really afraid of me. So afraid that you're talking to yourself. Is there any use in being afraid? You'll only be able to live until the Cloud Province Martial Gathering. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have the ability to meet me. Otherwise, I can only let you live for a few more days after the Cloud Province Martial Gathering ends. Eat whatever you want, play whatever you want. You must know how to cherish your life. To everyone's astonishment, a faint smile appeared on Chun Hao's handsome face at this moment. His aura seemed to have changed all of a sudden. It was now filled with a hint of laziness and a hint of evilness. That faint and calm voice contained arrogance and disdain that came from his bones. It was disdain for Xiao Jihan. Cherish your life. Ha! Ha! Xiao Jihan was so angry that he started laughing. His somewhat handsome face became a little distorted as he stared at Chun Hao with a sinister gaze. He said through gritted teeth, "You're not qualified. I'll let you know who will have the last laugh." Oomph. The Yuanling cave finally came to an end. The majority of the people were unable to determine who had won the battle between Xiao Jihan and Chun Hao. After all, the two of them came out at almost the same time. Xiao Jihan had broken through to grade 7 martial master, while Chun Hao did not reveal any aura when he came out. However, due to Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding's shock, the people faintly felt that things were not that simple. What realm had he broken through to? No one knew. Even 6th Elder Xiao Bo and the other higher-ups of the Xiao clan did not know. However, 6th Elder and the rest were incomparably clear that Chun Hao's harvest in the Yuanling cave was probably far beyond their imagination. This was because of Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding's shock, and also because after sealing the Yuanling cave, the two of them directly left with Chun Hao. They did not even summon Xiao Jihan, who had broken through to grade 7 martial master. In the deepest part of the Xiao clan's inner courtyard, in a simple and secluded courtyard, Chun Hao sat in front of Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding. The expression on his face had already returned to that of a simple and unscheming youth. There was even a trace of straightforwardness that made Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding feel helpless. Is it really that little? Old Man Xiao stared at Chun Hao in disbelief and asked, "Grade 1 is 10 taels of gold. Grade 1 is a little more than 1 tael. Don't hide it, cough cough." Old Man Xiao, Patriarch, it's really that little. That's right. Old Man Xiao, I remember you said that if I could enter the top 100 in the year-end competition, I would be rewarded with 100 taels of gold. It hasn't been fulfilled yet. I have already exceeded the quota. What made Old Man Xiao almost collapse was that it would have been fine if he did not mention the gold. Now that he did, this stinking brat actually brought it up. Isn't it just a fart of gold? What Old Man did for you, stinking brat? Is it something that can be measured by gold? You have really disappointed Old Man. Old Man Xiao was so angry that he was fuming with rage. Cough cough. Xiang Hao, when the Cloud State martial meet ends, you will know when you return home. Old Ancestor, what our Xiao clan has done for you is not something that can be measured by gold. In short, as long as the Xiao clan still exists, you do not need to have any worries. The Xiao clan will always be your backing. Xiao Ding could not help but interrupt. His words were extremely firm. Hearing the two's words, Chun Hao was slightly surprised in his heart. At the same time, he was also filled with gratitude. Although he did not know what Old Man Xiao had done, Xiao Ding's words made Chun Hao understand that his family had definitely obtained the protection of the Xiao clan without him knowing. Furthermore, it might be an extraordinary protection. Chun Hao looked at the two's eyes that were filled with anticipation. He scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said, My level is really at the peak of grade 2 martial master. Stinking brat, tell us the truth. No one has ever been able to walk out of the Yuanling cave by themselves." Old Man Xiao said, "Actually, it's nothing much. I just comprehended an absolute art. It shouldn't be too bad." As expected. Ha ha. Is it related to the icy qi? What made Chun Hao surprised was that Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding actually looked at each other. They seemed to be extremely excited, especially Old Man Xiao. At this moment, he suddenly seemed to be many years younger. His old face was suffused with a red glow as he asked 2 consecutive questions. Yes, strictly speaking, it can't be considered an absolute art. It's just like this. Chun Hao knew that he could not hide it, so he might as well not hide it anymore. As he spoke, he activated the Yuan power in his dantian. Immediately, a light red Yuan power gushed out from his palm. What made Old Man Xiao and Xiao Ding surprised was that Chun Hao's Yuan power, which was considered very weak to them, actually contained a bone-chilling energy. In an instant, the temperature in the entire room rapidly dropped. Mysterious ice chi. It's really mysterious ice chi. You, a martial master, can actually control mysterious ice chi. Although Old Man Xiao had already guessed this possibility, seeing Chun Hao actually use it at this moment, he was still indescribably shocked. P.S. Thanks to Xiao Feng, scent drizzle, passionate love carrot carrot, ching ching, emote chingy, chuan liang woozy, fish that can't really swim, Albert_47, Chun, the 8 students' rewards. Thank you very much. After reading the update, those students who haven't added it yet, please add it to your collection. Thank you. Chapter 40. Mysterious Ice Chi. Is Elder Xiao very powerful? Looking at Elder Xiao and Xiao Ding's shocked expressions, Chen Hao asked in slight surprise. In his mind, it was just a coincidence that the icy chi in the elemental spirit cave merged into his own origin power. It was no big deal. However, he didn't expect Elder Xiao and Xiao Ding to be so shocked. It seemed that it was far from simple. It's more than powerful. Elder Xiao took a deep breath and said, "A martial artist's cultivation goes against the heavens and changes one's fate. The highest realm is turned the 5 elements, reverse yin and yang. Only by reaching this realm can one become a legendary existence that surpasses the martial god realm." Surpasses the martial god realm. Legendary existence? Chun Hao suddenly said in surprise. What was the martial god realm? Martial artists were divided into 9 levels. Martial disciple, martial student, martial warrior, martial master, martial emperor, martial ancestor, martial saint, and martial god. This was the highest realm he knew so far. The martial god realm was Chun Hao's ultimate goal. However, Elder Zhao's words now clearly told him that the martial god realm was not the end. The path of cultivation is endless. Although the martial god realm is powerful, it is only the highest realm of a martial artist. Above the martial god realm, there are still legendary existences that we can't touch. Old man's life is hopeless, Elder Xiao said with a trace of envy and gratification in his eyes. He continued, "Brat, maybe one day you can reach it." This, turn the 5 elements, reverse yin and yang, refers to the 2 realms of the martial saint and martial god realm. Only by advancing to the martial saint realm can one comprehend the mystery of the 5 elements and truly merge one's own vigorous origin power with heaven and earth. As one wishes, one can convert it into the powerful and endlessly useful 5 elements energy. The 5 elements cycle endlessly. After reaching the peak realm, one can reverse yin and yang and step into the martial god realm. As for you, Elder Xiao paused slightly and continued. You comprehended a type of 5 elements energy at the martial master realm. Furthermore, it was the most powerful water attribute, mysterious ice chi. You're only a little over 12 years old. I don't dare to say that you'll definitely reach the martial god realm or surpass it and become a legendary existence. But old man can be sure that as long as you concentrate on your cultivation, there won't be any problem for you to advance to the martial saint realm. Martial saint is considered a top expert in our Jin Yuan kingdom. Chen Hao knew very well that old man Xiao was merely a martial emperor level expert. As for what rank martial emperor he was, Chen Hao did not know. As for Xiao Ding, although he had comprehended the martial emperor barrier, he was still only a 9th grade martial emperor. I'm actually that powerful. Chen Hao looked at old man Xiao and Xiao Ding's envious eyes and couldn't help but scratch his head as he said with a little embarrassment, "You're very powerful, but it's your potential. Brat, old man is telling you now. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't use the mysterious ice chi. Especially during the martial competition in Yun province. Don't use it. Your current cultivation is too weak, but you possess this kind of potential. If the other powers that are hostile to our Xiao clan were to find out, I'm afraid that no one would dare to let you grow. They would definitely use any means to eliminate you at all costs." Old man Xiao said with a serious expression. "It's that serious?" "Yes." Xiao Ding also said in a deep voice. "You can't tell anyone about this before you're truly strong. It's fine if it's an ordinary genius, even if it's someone like Xiao Jihan. However, you're different. Comprehending the mysterious ice chi at the martial master realm is too shocking. Who would dare to let an enemy who has a high chance of advancing to the martial saint realm grow? If it were our Shao clan, we would also do it at all costs. Otherwise, our entire clan would be destroyed in the future. Yes, Shao Ding is right. However, we don't mean for you to be patient. As a cultivator, you can never lose your drive to forge ahead. You must have the courage and sharpness that you should have. This is the heart of a cultivator. Once you lose it, you'll lose more than you gain. Unless you're in a life and death situation, don't use it. Do you understand what we mean? I understand. Don't worry, Old Man Shao clan, I know what to do. Chun Hao could feel the concern that Old Man Shao and Shao Ding had for him, so he did not dare to be careless. He nodded with a serious expression and said, "That's good. Shang Hao, you don't have to worry about the life and death battle between you and Shao Jihan. Old Man Shao and I will think of a way," Shao Ding said. Shao Jihan had already advanced to a grade 7 martial master. For the time being, it was unlikely that Chun Hao would be a match for him. The difference in cultivation was too great. Although Chun Hao could control the mysterious ice chi, his cultivation was unable to display the true might of the mysterious ice chi. Furthermore, Chun Hao could not expose himself in front of everyone. Therefore, in Shao Ding and Old Man Zhao's opinion, Chun Hao had no chance of winning. Clan head, I don't want you and Old Man Shao to interfere in this matter. Old Man Shao also said that a martial artist cannot lose his martial heart. Just as Shao Ding finished speaking, Chun Hao shook his head and said with a resolute expression, "This, Shao Ding, listen to this kid." Just as Shao Ding was about to say something, Old Man Shao suddenly stopped him. "All right, then you should go and meet up with Shao Guan and the rest. There are only 20 days left until the Cloud State Martial Gathering. In these 20 days, Shao Guan and the rest will accompany you to train. You will be facing the other 3 great clans. It will be very important for you." Shao Ding said, "Also, your spiritual medicine is with Shao Mei. Shao Mei will be your personal instructor and sparring partner for this period of time." And Chun Hao replied and cupped his fist towards Old Man Shao and Shao Ding. After bowing, he walked out of the room. Seeing Chun Hao quickly leaving, Shao Ding slightly frowned and asked Old Man Shao, "Old Ancestor, could it be that you think Xiang Hao can defeat Shao Jihan? I cannot be certain whether he could defeat Old Man or not. At least, I cannot be certain right now. However, for Shao Jihan to want to kill him, I'm afraid that it's not very possible. This kid still has a lot of things that even I cannot see through. You should know that he entered the Magic Cloud Mountain Range to train when he was a rank 9 martial disciple, right? I know. Back then, how could Old Man dare to let him go alone?" But, although Old Man Zhao's face was a bit conflicted, he still said, "Old Man actually lost him. Martial Emperor, I am a rank 6 martial emperor. To lose a martial disciple. In the 4 months he spent in the Magic Cloud Mountain Range, he went from a 9th grade martial disciple to a martial master. Even if he were to meet Shao Jihan in the Yun Province martial meet, it would still be close to a month later. With this brat's abnormal talent, can you tell what grade of martial master he will be after a month? Furthermore what?" Shao Ding was slightly moved. He had only thought of the disparity between Chun Hao and Shao Jihan. However, he had overlooked Chun Hao's abnormal talent. Of course, this was also because he did not have a deep understanding of Chun Hao. According to Old Man's observation, this stinking brat never does anything that he is not confident in. Furthermore, there are a lot of things about him that Old Man cannot see through. Old Man, Shao shook his head. He seemed to be extremely depressed. However, he was also filled with expectation as he said, "Little Ding, our Shao family is too small. His world is destined to surpass our imagination. You should now understand why Old Man treated his family like that, right?" "I understand." Shao Ding revealed a trace of embarrassment. He said with a deep voice, "Old Ancestor is far-sighted. What we want is this good karma. When a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs will ascend to heaven. When he truly matures, it will be enough if he remembers our Shao family's kindness. Also, from now on, you should pay attention to the Dongfang family." Shao Ding was slightly stunned when he heard Old Man Zhao's words. However, he immediately understood and said respectfully, "Yes, Old Ancestor. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Xiao Ding had to admit that compared to old man Xiao, his foresight, insight, courage, and experience were still a far cry. Xiao Jihan's original name was Dongfang Han. The Dongfang family was Xiao Jihan's family. Although they were not a martial arts family, their influence in Cloud State was not inferior to the four great families. They were the richest family in Cloud State and had strong financial resources. They supported a group of experts and had deep connections with the Cloud State city governor's estate and the four great families. This was the true hidden danger in the life and death battle between Chun Hao and Xiao Jihan. It was fine if Xiao Jihan won, but what if he was killed by Chun Hao? Since the Xiao family had chosen Chun Hao, they had to prepare for a rainy day. This was also the real reason why Xiao Ding found it hard to make a choice and was slightly dissatisfied with old man Xiao helping Chun Hao's family. The Xiao family's inner courtyard martial arts hall was the place where the Xiao family's inner disciples cultivated. However, it was currently being used by Xiao Guan and the others. Unlike the open-air martial arts practice field, the hall was filled with weapons. There were sabers, spears, swords, halberds, axes, whips, staffs, and other commonly used weapons. There were dozens of weapons of each type. In the hall, other than Xiao Guan, Xiao Jihan, Xiao Jishan, and the other disciples who were participating in the Cloud State martial arts competition, there were also 10 inner disciples. These 10 inner disciples were all in their 20s. There were 7 males and 3 females. They were the most outstanding disciples of the Xiao family and had participated in the Cloud State martial arts competition. They were the sparring partners that Xiao Guan had specially arranged for Xiao Jihan and the others. Boom, boom, boom. Clang, clang, clang. When Chun Hao arrived at the inner courtyard martial arts hall, Xiao Jihan, Xiao Jishan, and the others were each sparring with an inner disciple. Sabers and swords flashed as they exchanged blows. The majestic elemental energy waves and the cheers of the crowd made Chun Hao's blood boil and his hands itch. It was really itchy. After training hard for 4 months in the demonic Cloud Mountain range, other than the time when he challenged Xiao Shiqing, he had not fought to his heart's content. It would be strange if his hands were not itchy. Chapter 41. Show. Lower your voice. Otherwise, if a certain beast hears you, you'll be scared witless and lose the chance to fight to the death. Chun Hao seemed to be intentionally lowering his voice, but his voice was still loud enough to be heard. His handsome face, slightly curved lips, and faint smile, coupled with his words, made Xiao Mei, Xiao Jishan, and the others feel as if their stomachs were cramping. Especially Xiao Jishan, who had known Chun Hao since the beginning. He deeply felt that Chun Hao had changed too much in the short span of 10 days. The young man who was once simple, persistent, and knew how to endure, but was also full of pride and bloodthirst, after getting along with Sister Mei for more than 10 days, actually said something that made people laugh, but was also arrogant and awe-inspiring. Xiao Jihan, who was walking in front, gritted his teeth in anger. His veins were bulging, and his fists were clenched so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. However, he forcefully suppressed his anger. He's only a grade 3 martial master. What do I, Xiao Jihan, have to fear? At the same level, how can Xiao Mei's talent and combat strength compare to mine? I've already reached the peak of a grade 7 martial master. During the battle, I'll definitely advance to a grade 8 martial master or even a grade 9 martial master. He'll be scared witless. Does he really think that I haven't improved in the past 20 days? I'll let this bastard be proud for now. When I erupt with my true strength, I'd like to see he'll be scared witless. Endure, endure, endure. Endure, endure, endure. I, Xiao Jihan, will ruthlessly trample this bastard under my feet in a battle to the death. I'll use my talent and my absolute strength to blind Xiao Guan, Xiao Mei, and all of your dog eyes. I'll let you know that I, Xiao Jihan, am not someone that a clown like Chun Hao can compare to. In the past 20 days of special training, Xiao Jihan had always been on the verge of exploding. In the past, when had he not been in existence that everyone revolved around? In the past 20 days, the glory that should have belonged to him had been completely occupied by Chun Hao. Under the guidance of Xiao Jishan, Xiao Jifei, Xiao Mei, Xiao Feng, and a few other sparring partners. The 10 disciples who had obtained the qualification to participate in the Yun State martial gathering were mostly chatting and laughing with Chen Hao. Xiao Jihan gritted his teeth as he slowly suppressed the anger in his heart. He immediately calmed himself down and ignored Chen Hao and the others. And he seemed to have become an isolated existence. Even head instructor Xiao Guan, who was famous for his coldness toward Chen Hao, paid a lot of attention to him. This strong contrast made Xiao Jihan hate everyone to the core. He wanted to prove himself in the near future, in the Cloud Prefecture martial meet, in the life and death battle. The group of people moved forward at a steady pace. After an hour, the familiar Taiping town came into Chen Hao's sight. For half a year, although Taiping town was only half an hour's walk away from the Xiao family, the rules of the Xiao family forbade any new disciples from going out without permission. Except for the time when he went to the Demon Cloud Mountain, Chen Hao hadn't even stepped out of the gate of the Xiao family, let alone go home to see his parents, younger siblings, and Buttface looking at the familiar Taiping town from afar. Chen Hao, who was walking in the group, was inexplicably excited, especially when he saw the bustling crowd on both sides of the street at the entrance of the town. His eyes shone brightly. With his extraordinary eyesight, he saw the familiar figures standing in the front at a glance. A trace of a smile and excitement that Xiao Mei, Xiao Jishan, and the others had never seen before appeared on Chen Hao's handsome face. In the past, the disciples of the Xiao family would pass by Taiping town before the Yun State martial gathering. At this time, Taiping town, which was created by the Xiao family and was protected by the Xiao family, would be like a festival. Almost everyone in the town would come out to see them off. On both sides of the street, all kinds of delicious food and wine would be placed to send their blessings and expectations. The disciples of the Xiao family who passed by would be praised and envied by everyone. If the children of the families in the town were in the group, they would be congratulated and praised by countless people. In the eyes of these ordinary people, this was an unparalleled honor. Brother, when Chen Hao and the others were dozens of meters away from the entrance of the town, they finally recognized his younger brother and sister in the crowd. Then they shouted in a childish voice, full of surprise. His younger brother and sister, who were not even 8 years old, were like two cheerful birds running towards Chen Hao at their fastest speed. Looking at his younger brother and sister's clothes and their cute rosy cheeks, Chen Hao smiled. Even though he was no longer the Chen Hao of the past, this warmth, this longing, and this pure familial love are the most precious things in Chen Hao's heart. Whether it was the past him or the past madman Li Yuan, they were all like this. It was as if the softest thing in his heart had been touched. Chen Hao's tenacious nerves were a little unable to control his feelings. Suddenly, the beautiful and cute little sister, who was like a butterfly, let out a cry of surprise. Perhaps because she was running too fast, she staggered and flew forward. Xiao Ding was very clear that these two children were Chen Hao's family. Therefore, when they ran over, he had already turned around to look at Chen Hao. At this moment, when he heard the little girl's cry of surprise, he immediately turned around and attacked without hesitation. But with just a turn, Xiao Ding, who was already half a step into the martial emperor realm, was shocked to find that someone was even faster than him. A dazzling fiery red light instantly transformed into a gust of wind and arrived in front of the little girl at an astonishing speed. But what made everyone even more shocked was that the moment the pure and valiant origin energy arrived in front of the little girl, it actually became incomparably gentle. Lightly, it supported the little girl's body like a gentle big hand before the crowd could be shocked for too long. Chen Hao was already like a cheetah. With a swoosh, he had already crossed the distance of several feet. Using his exquisite control of Yuan power, Chen Hao had actually rushed to his little sister's side in that short moment. He hugged his little sister in his arms. Brother, Chen Hao's beautiful little face did not seem to realize the danger she was in. She only stared at her brother, who had suddenly carried her in his arms with her adorable eyes. Her tender little face was brimming with excitement and joy as she tightly hugged Chen Hao's neck. Brother, Chen Nan, who had rushed over, stopped with a face full of admiration, envy, and excitement. She turned around and pounced on Chun Hao. As if she wanted to climb a tree, she wanted to climb into Chun Hao's arms. "Brother!" hugged Nan Nan. "Brother! You're so amazing!" Xiao Ding stopped. Everyone in the Xiao clan stared blankly at Chun Hao. This was just an insignificant interlude, but Chun Hao's exquisite control of Yuan power and astonishing speed had imperceptibly shocked everyone, including Xiao Ding, Xiao Bo, and Xiao Guan. All felt their hearts tremble. How could a martial master, and an inferior martial master at that, possess such powerful control of Yuan power? Xiao Jihan, who was at the peak of Grade 7 Martial Master and would be able to break through to Grade 8 Martial Master in a few days, was definitely unable to do so. This had truly blinded Xiao Jihan's dog eyes, seeing Chun Hao being intimate with his younger brother and sister. A trace of extreme ruthlessness flashed across Xiao Jihan's eyes. There were some things that were absolutely forbidden in the world of martial artists. However, the intense hatred he had for Chun Hao nearly drove Xiao Jihan crazy. Xiao Jihan did not know that although the trace of ruthlessness that flashed across his eyes was quickly concealed, Xiao Ding, who was standing in front of him, had keenly felt the change in Xiao Jihan's aura. With a slight glance, he had a panoramic view of Xiao Jihan's gaze. Regarding Xiao Jihan, when Elder Xiao made his decision, Xiao Ding still felt a trace of pity. After all, Xiao Jihan had been the focus of the Xiao clan's nurturing for the past 3 years. But now, Xiao Jihan's ruthless gaze had finally caused the trace of pity in Xiao Ding's heart to vanish. "Go on, talk to your family. Don't delay for too long. Quickly catch up with the group." Xiao Ding waved his hand with a trace of a smile on his face as he spoke to Chun Hao. "Thank you, Patriarch." Father, mother, Chun Hao carried his younger sister in one hand and his younger brother in the other. His face was filled with unconcealable joy and excitement. Under the envious gazes of many people in Taiping town, he walked to his parents and family and bowed to them. Tianzi, his mother, who was originally extremely haggard, now had a rosy complexion, as if she had become many years younger. Her voice was trembling as she hurriedly bent down to help her son, whom she had not seen for half a year, up. Her kind eyes glistened with sparkling tears as she carefully sized up Chun Hao. Her hands trembled slightly as she caressed her son's face. What made Chun Hao slightly surprised was that although his father was sitting in a brand new wheelchair and looked the same as before, Chun Hao's sharp intuition told him that his father's aura was like that of a completely different person. This was especially so when his father looked at him silently with a flash of light in his eyes. "Father, go ahead. You don't need to worry about our family. The Xiao family has given us a lot. We are all fine now. A real man should know how to repay kindness. You should cultivate hard to repay the kindness of a Xiao family. When you have time, come back once in a while to visit your mother and younger brother and sister. They talk about you every day, which is very annoying." "I understand," Chun Hao said in a low voice. He did not say anything else. In the past, he was not sensible enough to pay attention to some problems. But now, seeing his father again, Chun Hao thought a lot in an instant. His father had never mentioned anything about his past in front of his son. The only thing he knew was that his mother had saved his father. Then they got together and married. Later, they had a younger brother and a younger sister. "Go ahead." "Okay. Mother, why didn't Buttface and Annie come?" Chun Hao finally had time to ask. Brother Buttface has become a disciple of the Leaf family." Chunin said first. "A disciple of the Leaf family? Which Leaf family?" Chun Hao suddenly asked, a little surprised. "P.S. Collect. Brothers and sisters who have finished reading this, please click to collect and recommend it. It is very, very much needed. Thank you very, very much, please." Chapter 42. Please collect, recommend. Thank you. After you joined the Xiao family, Buttface seemed to have gone crazy. That lad trains himself every day, and no one can stop him. No matter what, he wants to take part in the Xiao family's test in 3 years. But 3 years is too long. Chen Hai frowned and stared at his son with bright eyes. After a short pause, he continued, "The Li family is also a martial arts aristocratic family in Yinzhou County. Although it is not as powerful as the four great families, it is not weak. You should be able to see the Yunzhou martial arts competition." "Well, you should go now. They're already far away," Chen Hai said. "Okay." Chen Hao nodded. "Brother, Xiaoyu doesn't want you to go." Chen Yu suddenly threw herself into Chen Hao's arms and said with tears streaming down her little face, "Good girl, Xiaoyu, I will come back. Don't cry. Look at Xiao Nan. He is not crying. I am a man. I will become a martial artist like you. I will not cry. Xiaoyu, let go of me," Chen Nan said like a little adult, but his eyes were filled with tears. Everyone could see that he was just holding back his tears. Chen Hao looked at his younger brother and revealed a wisp of a light smile on the corners of his mouth. He lightly patted Chen Nan's head before putting his younger sister down, and then he bowed deeply to his parents before resolutely turning around and leaving swiftly without looking back. Junior brother, you can cry too?" What made Chen Hao feel incomparably awkward was that he hadn't walked far when Xiao Mei's sexy personal instructor flashed in front of him and said with a charming smile on her charming face, "Who is crying?" "It is Sand." Chen Hao rubbed his eyes gloomily and said, "Why are you waiting for me? I am your personal instructor. Shouldn't I be waiting for you?" Xiao Mei raised her eyebrows and asked. After a short pause, she said, I just asked someone to do a small thing. The family head really cares about you." "What do you mean?" Xiao Mei suddenly mentioned the family head, which made Chen Hao a little confused. "Nothing. You will know when the time comes. Hurry up. Junior brother, your brother and sister are so cute. You must have been so cute when you were a child, right? Gossip. Senior sister, you're so good to me. Aren't you afraid that senior brother Xiao Feng will be jealous?" "Senior sister, what does it have to do with him who I treat well? This is the second time. If you say it again in the future, I won't forgive you. Besides, you're just a little brat. Who will be jealous of you?" As the two of them spoke, they slightly gathered their essence force and quickly chased after the Xiao clan's group. Following the arrival of the Cloud Prefecture Martial Gathering, the flow of visitors to the Cloud Prefecture city had reached its peak in the past few days. Within a radius of a few hundred miles, many powers had entered the Cloud Prefecture city one after another. Inns of all sizes were packed with people. Even some of the houses were temporarily rented by some rich or noble people who came to watch. The Cloud State Martial Gathering was the grandest event of the year in the entire Cloud State County. There were more than 100 forces participating. Other than the participating forces who could bring a certain number of disciples into the Yunzhou martial arts arena, ordinary people had to buy expensive tickets to be qualified to enter the arena. Ordinary people who didn't have money could only watch from afar. Under the lead of Xiao Ding, Xiao Bo, and Xiao Guan, the Xiao clan's disciples didn't stop. Finally, in the evening, the tall city walls and magnificent city gates appeared before everyone's eyes. The crowd didn't have any obstructions. Under the respectful gazes of the city guards, they directly entered the Cloud State City. On the bustling streets, people came and went. The appearance of a Xiao clan's group attracted countless people's attention and discussions. What made Chen Hao slightly surprised was that he actually heard his name among the discussions. That should be the young master of the Dongfang clan, Xiao Jihan, right? I heard that he only used half a year to advance from a 7th grade martial warrior to a 7th grade martial master. Among the disciples who signed up for the martial gathering, he is one of the strongest contenders for the champion. His odds are the same as the Mo clan's Mo Yui and the Sima clan's Sima Jinshin. He is second only to the Haolian clan's Haolian Wuzi and Haolian Iching. He's only 16 years old. The Xiao clan can be considered to have produced a super genius. Xiao Jihan is indeed a super genius. However, it's more or less due to the support of the Dongfang clan's excessive amount of spiritual herbs. The other disciple of the Xiao clan is the real genius. Do you see that very young and handsome youth behind Xiao Jihan? His name is Xiao Xianghao, and he's not even 13 years old. He's the youngest disciple who signed up this time. He's a disciple of the Xiao clan with the Xiang in his name. I heard that he's already a second-grade martial master after cultivating for half a year. It can't be. You don't know? I heard it from the Hallian clan's disciple in the tavern. He's a rare genius in our Cloud State County. However, it's a pity. A pity? What's a pity? I heard that the Shao clan's patriarch's daughter, Shao Xianghao, and the Dongfang clan's young master, Shao Jihan, somehow agreed to a life-and-death battle. That's a life-and-death battle. How could that Shao Xianghao agree? I don't know. In any case, the news is accurate. Furthermore, the Shao clan's patriarch tried to mediate but failed. It's really a pity. There were actually quite a number of such discussions, causing Chunhao to be shocked in his heart. No matter what, he didn't expect the news to spread so quickly. He also didn't expect that he would become a celebrity the moment he arrived in Cloud State County. The youngest contestant, a true genius rarely seen in Yunzhou County. This hat is really big. I was already low-key enough, but I didn't expect that I was still too high profile. Chunhao shrugged, and the corner of his mouth revealed a helpless and bitter smile. Why? Are you surprised? It had to be said that Xiao Mei, as his personal instructor, was too dutiful. Chunhao's every move seemed to be unable to escape her fiery eyes. She seemed to be paying attention to Chunhao at all times. Not really. If we can find out about the situation of the various major powers, others will naturally have their own channels to find out about us. It's just that the news spread too quickly. Furthermore, it's very gossipy. Gossipy? What does gossipy mean? That's just nonsense, really. What they said seems to be the truth. Truth? Senior sister, how could I possibly have a life-and-death battle with Shao Jihan because of a little girl? What I mean is that this has nothing to do with senior sister Jiyan. As for whether a certain beast has anything to do with it, that's his business. If it's not because of Jiyan, then it's because a certain beast is trying to suppress you. You're going to have a life-and-death battle with him? Xiao Mei asked in disbelief. Please, senior sister, I'm only a little over 12 years old. I haven't even experienced love. I, Shao Xianghao, am not someone who can be suppressed by anyone. A kind person will be bullied, and a kind horse will be ridden. If he wants to kick me out of the Shao family, then I want him dead. Chunhao, who was originally speaking in a joking tone, couldn't help but emit a cold glint in his eyes as he spoke towards the end. This made Xiao Mei a little surprised. The more she interacted with Chunhao, the more Xiao Mei realized that there was something about Chunhao that didn't match his age. Although the two of them were getting closer and closer, and Chunhao was usually very easygoing, Xiao Mei could feel that Chunhao had an untamed and unyielding nature that was hidden in his bones. Xiao Mei couldn't figure out what a 13-year-old youth had gone through to have such a temperament that completely surpassed his peers. Just as Xiao Ding was leading the group towards the Shao family's encampment in Cloud State City, a large group of people walked towards them in a grandiose manner. Wherever they passed, the crowd would quickly disperse. What was different from the Shao family was that the crowd that had dispersed seemed to be very fearful. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly, let alone talk. It's the Sima family. The one in the middle of the three people at the front is the head of the Sima family, Sima Zhen. The other two are their elders. The one in the middle at the back is a strong contender for the champion of the Cloud State martial meet, Sima Jianyan. Xiao Mei whispered in Chunhao's ear. Chunhao nodded and looked over. The head of the Sima family was about the same age as Xiao Ding. He looked like a door god with a ferocious face. He emitted a cold and unyielding aura. With just a glance, it was clear that this person was a vicious and merciless person who killed without batting an eyelid. Chunhao glanced at him, then shifted his gaze to Sima Jianyan. At the same time, Shao Jihan also looked at Sima Jianyan. This was the opponent they were likely to meet. As if sensing the attention of the two, Sima Jianyan, who looked exactly like Sima Zhen, glanced at Shao Jihan and revealed a trace of disdain. He actually locked his gaze on Chunhao. However, his gaze didn't seem like he was looking at an opponent, but rather curiosity. Oh, isn't this the head of the Shao family, Xiao Ding? Long time no see. I heard that two geniuses have appeared in your Shao family. How rare. You finally have a slight chance of retaining the title of one of the four great families. Oh, I also heard that your two geniuses are going to have a life and death battle. How fun! I'm really curious if you, the head of the family, will go against the spirit of a cultivator in order to protect the two geniuses. Ha! Don't worry, Sima. My Xiao family won't be like a certain family who relied on being a certain family's dog to bite people everywhere to become one of the four great families. We can't afford to lose face like that. Xiao Ding looked at the Sima family that was walking towards them. His expression was neither warm nor angry, but the words he said hit the nail on the head and pierced the Sima family's sore spot. You, Xiao Ding smiled faintly and calmly brushed past the furious Sima Zhen. Xiao Ding, don't think that no one will dare to touch your Xiao family just because that old man is here. I want to see how long you can live. Sima Zhen turned around and roared at Xiao Ding's back. You won't see it. Before I die, you'll definitely be in the coffin, Xiao Ding said without turning his head. His tone was still neither warm nor angry. But the more it was so, the greater the lethality. It was completely undisguised disregard. P.S. Thanks to passionate love Xiao Feng scent drizzle, Chuan Liang woozy, watermelon skin in zero, reminiscing Xiao Yi, fish that can't really swim, and Scarlet Samsara for their donations and support. Thank you. Please recommend. Chapter 43. Although Cloud State City was only a county town, it occupied a vast area that exceeded Chun Hao's imagination. It was not inferior to the metropolises on Earth. The only difference was that there were no tall buildings with tens or hundreds of floors. Xiao Ding led the crowd and walked for half an hour before arriving at the Xiao clan's residence. Although the Xiao clan's headquarters was in the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, as one of the four great clans of Cloud State, they naturally had a residence in Cloud State City. The size of the residence was also extremely vast. After a simple welcome, Chun Hao, Xiao Jihan, and the other participating disciples went to the rooms that were specially arranged for them. Today, even Chun Hao only meditated for 4 hours before he stopped cultivating. Instead, he entered a rare state of sleep. Ever since the demonic Cloud Mountain range, Chun Hao had not truly slept for a day. This sleep was very sweet. It was only until the next morning when Xiao Mei knocked on the door that he woke up with a lingering desire. The Xiao clan has arrived. When Xiao Ding led the Xiao clan disciples to the entrance of the martial arts arena that was incomparably huge, with a radius of nearly 1,000 meters, the guards guarding the entrance emitted a valiant aura. Instantly, the energy in their dantian surged, and their vigorous voices reverberated. What shocked Chun Hao and the Xiao clan disciples was that the huge martial arts arena was actually filled with a sea of people. In the middle of the arena, there was an incomparably huge arena that stood in the middle of the arena. The spectator stands around the arena were densely packed with people. At the front of the spectators' stands, banners fluttered in the wind. They were all disciples in the uniform of the various major powers. Xiao clan head, this way please. An expert guard from the city lord's residence said respectfully. After he finished speaking, he led the Xiao clan disciples to the seats that were arranged for them. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, the Xiao clan disciples were all slightly excited, especially the Xiang generation disciples who had never seen the Cloud State martial gathering. Their hearts surged with passion. They secretly made up their minds to cultivate diligently and strive for the day that they would participate in the Cloud State martial gathering as participants and not as spectators. Xiao clan head, this is the seat of your Xiao clan. After more than 10 minutes, the city lord's residence guard led Xiao Ding and the rest to the seats where the Xiao clan's banner was erected. And thank you. You're welcome. Patriarch Xiao, 6th elder, please take a seat on the rostrum. Okay, we'll go in a bit. Xiao Ding glanced at the grandstand allocated to the Xiao family with a faint smile on his face. His eyes imperceptibly glanced at Di Ling, Yin, who was already seated on the grandstand, and cupped his fists in satisfaction. Okay, then I'll take my leave first. After Xiao Ding gave a few simple instructions to everyone, He and sixth elder, Xiao Bo, quickly went to the rostrum at the edge of the central main arena and sat down. As one of the four great clans, they had two spots in the Cloud State's Martial Meets Arbitration Committee. Xiao Ding, Hellion Clan, Mo Clan, and Sima Clan's clan heads were respectively appointed as the vice team leaders of the arbitration group. The Cloud State City's city lord, Li Ran, was appointed as the team leader. The Xiao clan's results in the Cloud State Martial Meet had been poor for many years. Although a starving camel was still bigger than a horse, there had to be someone who admitted that the camel was not dead. And now, the position of the Xiao clan's disciples was enough to tell everyone that in the eyes of the city lord's mansion, the Xiao clan was still one of the four great clans, one of the four great powers of the Cloud Prefecture. However, whether or not they would be able to convince the masses was still unknown. Dong, dong, dong. At the end of the 7 in the morning, at 9 in the morning, the melodious sound of a bell rang out. The Cloud State Martial Meet that everyone had been waiting for was finally about to begin. Right at this moment, a figure slowly rose from the center of the rostrum, as if he was floating in the air. But what was strange was that there were no fluctuations of yuan power around him. Just like that, accompanied by the melodious sound of the bell, he slowly descended onto the main arena. At this moment, the originally noisy venue suddenly quieted down. Everyone's gazes were fixed on that celestial-like figure. This was an old man with white hair and a white beard, but a youthful complexion. His entire body emitted a scholarly aura. If it wasn't for the fact that they personally saw the old man displaying the ability to float in the air that ordinary people were unable to do, no one would have known that this was an expert, because there was indeed no fluctuation of yuan power on the old man's body. This senior is the city lord's mansion's city lord, Senior Li Ran. His cultivation is even stronger than the old ancestors by 30%. When the city lord's mansion's city lord Li Ran began to announce the list of factions participating in this year's Cloud State Martial Meet and the rules of the competition, Xiao Mei lowered her voice and whispered into Chun Hao's ear. Isn't it strange that he can float in the air without any fluctuation of yuan power? That's right. Chun Hao was slightly stunned. He didn't sense any fluctuation of yuan power, but Chun Hao's innately sharp intuition had sensed another type of energy that was completely different from yuan power. It was like a cool breeze, formless and formless, but it gently lifted the old man's body. However, after hearing Xiao Mei's words, Chun Hao didn't explain it clearly. Senior Li Ran is a type of cultivator that is completely different from martial artists. In our entire Jin Yuan kingdom, he is an extremely rare existence. Oh, what is that? Intent. Intent and martial artists are two completely different types of cultivation. Martial artists refine their physical body and increase their yuan power, while intent cultivators refine their thoughts and increase their mental strength. It is also known as intent cultivation. Compared to martial artists, intent cultivators have a much harder time, especially in the early stages. They can't fight against martial artists at all. However, as their mental strength increases in the later stages, they will have even more mystical abilities than martial artists. Of course, this doesn't mean that martial artists are weak. These two types of cultivation actually lead to the same goal. Once you advance to the legendary martial saint realm, there isn't much difference. That means... Chun Hao frowned slightly. After pondering for a while, he said, intent cultivators also need to refine their physical body and condense their yuan power. Martial artists also need to refine their thoughts and increase their mental strength. Advancing to martial saint is the fusion of these two completely different types of energy, right? So smart. After martial artists step into martial ancestor, they will mainly refine their thoughts. On the other hand, intent cultivators, after stepping into intense sect, will mainly refine their physical body. The classification of intent cultivators is the same as martial artists, except that the word martial has become intent. Of course, although different paths lead to the same goal, there are still some differences due to the difference in their main cultivation. I heard this from my grandfather. Perhaps one day, you will truly understand it. Xiao Mei's charming face revealed a slight smile as she whispered into Chun Hao's ear. The flash of sadness in her eyes did not escape Chun Hao's eyes. Chun Hao knew that Xiao Mei had only advanced to 9th grade martial master at the age of 22 and became an inner disciple of the Xiao clan. With this kind of aptitude, it was impossible for her to advance to 9th grade martial king according to the conventional rules, not to mention the martial saint realm, which was 2 grades higher than martial king. Senior sister, you seem to be very discouraged. I really don't understand. What does cultivation have to do with age? Why is it that being unable to advance to 9th grade martial master at the age of 20 can determine a person's lifetime achievement? This is the most absurd thing in the world. This is simply a self-imposed shackle on one's soul. It's pure nonsense. What made Xiao Mei flabbergasted was that Chun Hao's eyes were shining as he stared at her. He lowered his voice, but his words left no room for doubt. Chun Hao's words caused Xiao Mei's heart to tremble slightly, but she immediately shook her head sadly and said, "This is already the law of the martial world that has been summed up by countless generations of ancestors. Junior brother, I've already thought it through. It's nothing. Senior sister, let me ask you. Do you still have the confidence and passion you had when you were 20 years old? Do you still have the courage to advance before you were 20 years old? Do you still crazily cultivate day and night for the sake of breaking through?" Chun Hao suddenly asked a string of questions, each of which knocked into the depths of Xiao Mei's heart. "I'm certain that you don't." Chun Hao did not allow Xiao Mei to answer and said directly, "Listen to me. Don't care about that bullshit law. As long as you can break through this shackle, I believe that you will definitely surpass yourself. Human life is in your own hands, not up to the heavens. If you treat that law as destiny, you'll be cutting off your own path forward. It's really laughable. I don't know who came up with this law, but he really deserves to die. Although I don't know much about it, you can go look it up. I believe that there are definitely people, and many people, who are not restricted by this law." Under Chun Hao's repeated lectures, Xiao Mei's charming little face actually started to glow red. She muttered to herself for a while and said, "There's no need to look it up. There are indeed people who didn't advance to 9th grade martial master before they were 20 years old, but later became martial emperors. These people, without exception, are all people that martial artists take delight in talking about. Junior brother, is what you said true? If there are people who can do it, then you can do it. You don't even have this much confidence?" At this moment, Chun Hao, this little brat, seemed to have become Xiao Mei's personal instructor. He had the appearance of a disciple as he spoke. "Good. Senior sister knows what to do." Xiao Mei bit her lips, her eyes shining with a trace of determination as she spoke. "Hellion clan, Emo clan, Sima clan, and Xiao clan, disciples of the 4 great clans, please step onto the stage and draw lots." When Chun Hao and Xiao Mei's conversation came to an end, Li Ran's short opening speech had also just finished, and he directly began to draw lots before the competition. The rules of the Cloud Region Martial Gathering had already been established as an unchanging rule. All the participating disciples would be divided into 10 groups. The first place of each group would advance to the top 10. The disciples of each faction would draw lots to determine their groups. This way, they could completely avoid facing each other in the group matches and also maximize the strength of each faction. Boom, boom, boom. Just as the City Lord's words fell, the participating disciples of the 4 great clans all activated their origin power, and each of their figures rapidly flew towards the main stage. The disciples of the 4 great clans were, without a doubt, the most outstanding contestants in every Cloud Region Martial Gathering. This was their first appearance. Although it wasn't a battle, it was actually a secret competition. In almost an instant, the gazes of the tens of thousands of spectators gathered on each of the young but powerful figures. Chapter 44. From members of the arbitration team, each carried a pitch-black box to the main arena. In order to prevent the strong from meeting each other in the group matches, the arbitration team will follow the usual rules and assign the 10 disciples with the highest cultivation levels to the 10 groups. I'm sure all of you know the rules of the draw. The disciple whose name I call will draw a group number from the box in his house. Yes. The 40 disciples of the four great clans replied in unison. The two grade 8 martial masters from the Halian clan, Halian Iching and Halian Wuzi, are in the top 10. As soon as Li Ran finished speaking, the spectators, led by the Halian family's disciples, burst into enthusiastic applause and praise. The fact that the Halian clan could be the leader of the four great clans for such a long time showed that they had the capital and strength to back it up. Among all the participating disciples, the highest cultivation level was a grade 8 martial master, and there were only 2 of them. However, both of them were from the Halian clan. With such strength, the other powers couldn't compare to them. Halian Iching was the son of the Halian clan's patriarch. His figure wasn't tall, nor was he handsome. However, his small eyes and his angular face were filled with a manly aura. At first glance, one could tell that he was a cold, determined, and arrogant person who didn't want to be inferior to others. He was engaged to Halian Wuzi, who was known as the #1 genius beauty in the Cloud region and had countless suitors 3 years ago, causing all of her suitors to feel powerless and powerless without a doubt. Halian Iching and Halian Wuzi were the 2 most likely to win the championship. They were also the focus of everyone's attention. The 2 of them drew their group numbers from the box specially provided for the Halian clan. They were 3 and 7 respectively. Xiao Jihan from the Xiao clan is in the top 10 as a grade 7 martial master. After that, Xiao Jihan drew 6 from the Xiao clan's box. After that, the grade 7 martial master Mo Yui from the Mo clan and Sima Jianshan from the Sima clan were in the top 10. After the 5 of them finished drawing their lots, Chun Hao and the other 35 disciples from the 4 great clans who weren't in the top 10 drew their group numbers from the boxes provided by their respective clans. When Chun Hao saw the group number in his hand, he immediately furrowed his brows in a dilemma. Halian Wuzi, Pear Mountain. This luck was worse than stepping on dog poop. Halian Wuzi was indeed the Chun Hao of this lifetime. She was the most outstanding girl he had ever seen. She was indeed very beautiful, but this was not a wife-whipping, but an arena battle. This meant that if Chun Hao wanted to advance from the group stage, he would have to defeat Halian Wuzi, an 8th grade martial master. Halian Wuzi, who was even stronger than Xiao Jihan. No matter what, this was not what Chun Hao wanted to see. After all, if he could appear in a relatively weak group, he could not expose too much and advance in a low-key manner. That way, when he met Xiao Jihan, it would be the most advantageous for him. But now, the results of the drawing of lots completely destroyed Chun Hao's little plan. After knowing the result of Chun Hao's draw, Xiao Mei, Xiao Jishan, and the others felt that it was a pity, but only a little. After all, in the top 10, other than the 5 people from the 4 great clans, there were 3 other 7th grade martial masters. In Xiao Mei, in the others' opinion, these 8 people were difficult opponents for Chun Hao to defeat. The remaining 2 groups were the strongest among the 6th grade martial masters. Although Chun Hao had a little bit of hope, it was not very big. Therefore, in their opinion, Chun Hao could only fight for a higher ranking in the group stage. At his age, as long as he could enter the top 10 in the group stage, the glory he would bring would not be inferior to the glory of any contestant winning the championship. However, unlike the others, Xiao Ding was as conflicted as Chun Hao. This was because Xiao Ding knew Chun Hao more than they did. In Xiao Ding's opinion, as long as Chun Hao did not meet Halian Wuzi or Halian Iching, he would have a chance to advance from the group stage and advance to the top 10. If he met 2 6th grade martial masters in the 2 groups, he would be guaranteed to advance. What kind of glory would that be? But now, Chun Hao was unlucky enough to draw Halian Wuzi's group, which directly shattered Xiao Ding's expectations. No matter how strong Chun Hao was, in front of an 8th grade martial master, the gap between their realms was too big. After the 4 great clans finished drawing their lots, each group of 4 went up the stage to draw lots at the same time. When they met the top 10 contestants, they would use Halian Wuzi's method of drawing lots until they reached a different group. After an hour, the drawing of lots was finally completed. The group stage officially began. This time, the number of contestants in the Yunzhou martial arts meet exceeded any of the previous times. reaching a total of 160. This was under the condition that many small contestants were eliminated. Otherwise, there would be more than 200 contestants. Each contestant had 10 contestants, a total of 1,600 contestants. Each group had 160 contestants from different groups. There was no need to draw lots for the first 2 elimination rounds of the group stage. It was directly carried out by the judges according to the preliminary ranking of the contestants. For example, the first contestant in the group would face the 81st contestant in the first elimination round. The second contestant would face the 82nd contestant, and so on. The second round would be carried out in the same way. What made Chun Hao slightly surprised was that he, who was only a second-grade martial master when he signed up, was actually ranked 44th in the group. This also made Chun Hao realize the strength of the 4 great clans. It was indeed not something an ordinary power could compare to. Some of the contestants from the smaller groups were probably second-grade martial masters in their groups. The 10-square arena, 10 groups, under the guidance of 10 judges from the mayor's mansion, started at the same time, from weak to strong. The 80th contestant in the group versus the 160th contestant in the group. It had to be said that this kind of competition was extremely reasonable. A true powerhouse would not be buried because of bad luck. There was basically no suspense to the outcome of the first round. The gap between the realms was too obvious. In less than 4 hours, the first round of 80 matches had all ended. On average, each match did not even last 3 minutes. The first to 80th contestants had all won without exception. Moreover, all of them had won rather easily. Without any delay, the second round of the elimination round began. In the second round, Chun Hao did not have it as easy as the first round against the weak contestants. He, who was ranked 44th, was classified as a weak contestant this time. His opponent was the 4th-ranked contestant, Mo, family disciple, Mo Yuxiang, a 5th-grade martial master. It was also the 4th last match of the second round. To Chun Hao, this was the most crucial match. It could also be the strongest opponent that Chun Hao would face before advancing to the top 5. After all, in this round, after the top 40 contestants were decided, the third round would be to draw lots to decide their opponents. As long as their luck was not too bad, they would not be matched against the top 4 contestants. Although this kind of competition was very scientific, in the end, it could not completely avoid the existence of luck. Mo family's Mo Yuxiang, a 5th-grade martial master. Remember, the Mo family's martial techniques are known for their speed and craftiness. Speed is not too big of a problem for you. I've already told you everything that needs to be said. I believe that you will know how to deal with it. Xiao Mei, who was always by Chun Hao's side, said in a low voice when she saw that it was Chun Hao's turn to go up. Don't worry. After Chun Hao finished speaking, he stood up. When the referee called his name, his body flashed, and a faint red yuan power wave flashed under his body. He nimbly jumped onto the stage. The first 36 matches were the same as the first round. There is still a huge disparity between the contestants. No one was able to create a miracle and defeat an opponent who was ranked 40 ranks higher than them. This kind of match was more like a warm-up before an exciting battle. The audience was bored watching it. However, following Chun Hao's appearance, he instantly attracted countless gazes. There was quite a bit of applause and cheers. This kind of situation had already appeared when Chun Hao went up for the first time. It couldn't be helped. Who asked Chun how to become a celebrity in everyone's hearts? He wasn't even 13 years old and had only cultivated for half a year to step into the ranks of martial masters. Furthermore, he had defeated a peak second-grade martial master in the family tournament. This was really a bit too shocking. Against the Mo family's 5th-grade martial master, Mo Yuxiang, no one believed that Chun Hao could win. Everyone only wanted to see the performance of this super genius Chun Hao. When the referee straightforwardly announced the start of the match, Mo Yuxiang stirred up the yuan power in his dantian. In an instant, a majestic and vigorous yuan power wave spread out. A fiery red protective chi instantly condensed on his body. What vigorous yuan power! The audience near the stage couldn't help but exclaim. Mo Yuxiang's face was filled with pride. Using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Without a doubt, this was Mo Yuxiang's current mood. To Chun Hao, even if he was a super genius, he was still a second-grade martial master. The gap between their realms was too big. He didn't doubt that he could finish him off in a matter of minutes. But now he wouldn't do that. Because at this moment, in the entire arena, perhaps 90% of the audience was paying attention to this match. How could he let go of such a flashy and eye-catching opportunity? All along, he had been living under the shadow of the Mo family's #1 genius, Mo Yui. Cloud State City only knew of the Mo family's #1 genius, Mo Yui, but not him, Mo Yuxiang. Furthermore, this time, he had encountered a super expert like Hao Lian Wuzi. There was no hope for him to advance from the group stage. Therefore, to be able to fight with Chun Hao, the focus of everyone's attention, was an excellent opportunity for him to display his strength. He wanted everyone to see, know, and understand that the Mo family didn't only have Mo Yui, but also him, Mo Yuxiang. Mo Yuxiang's aura crazily rose. When it rose to the peak, he looked at the still motionless and calm Chun Hao. He was slightly surprised and said, "What? You want to admit defeat? That's too disappointing." Bang! What everyone, including Mo Yuxiang, didn't expect was that Chun Hao, who hadn't even activated his protective chi, suddenly stepped on the ground without any warning. With a huge explosion, his entire person charged towards Mo Yuxiang at a terrifying speed. Without any protective chi, it was as if he had given up on all defense. There was only attack, an attack that condensed all the yuan power in his body into his palms. Hiss, the entire arena resounded with countless gasps of cold air. Even Hao Lian Wuzi, who was sitting at the front of the stage, couldn't help but slightly shrink her cold eyes. Chapter 45. Strong attacks are full of flaws. He actually dares to sacrifice his protective aura to increase his attack power. Is this little guy stupid, or does he have something to rely on? Hao Lianwu frowned slightly. Her clear and cold eyes were like the blue sky and jade sea, deep and misty. It was as if there were waves of water flowing within them as she stared at Chun Hao, who had suddenly attacked in such a way. "You're courting death." Mo Yuxiang gave a loud cry, waving his palm and smacking out through the air. The majestic and terrifying essence energy was immediately like a roaring fire dragon, violently welcoming the Chun Hao, who did not have the slightest bit of defense. Boom! What shocked everyone was that Chun Hao did not dodge. Just as Mo Yuxiang's palm was about to reach him, he let out a low shout and suddenly slapped out with both palms. The vigorous and majestic light red yuan power was like an avalanche as it collided with Mo Yuxiang's attack. Dang, dang, dang. Under the violent impact, Mo Yuxiang actually retreated 3 steps before stabilizing his body. Looking at Chun Hao, who was rushing towards him at high speed, his body only seemed to slow down slightly before continuing to rush towards him. Mo Yuxiang's arrogant face revealed a trace of seriousness and extreme shock. Other than Xiao Mei and a few others, no one would have thought that Chun Hao was actually this strong. He's actually a 3rd-grade martial master? What a pure and vigorous yuan power. Hao Lian Wuzi's clear eyes rippled as she stared at Chun Hao and thought to herself, I didn't think that you'd actually be promoted to a 3rd-grade martial master. You've really hidden it well. However, is this enough? After a short moment of shock, Mo Yuxiang, who was forced back by Chun Hao in one move, felt that he had lost all his face and said angrily, "Giant wave, 5 full palm." After a loud shout, Mo Yuxiang, who had put away his contempt, suddenly slapped out with his left palm, and his right palm quickly followed up. Following that, he retracted his left palm and added it to his right palm. In an instant, both of his hands seemed to have turned into an illusion. The speed was so fast that no one could see it clearly. The 5 consecutive palms were like 9 shocking giant waves. The rear waves pushed the front, and the waves overlapped as they rushed towards Chun Hao. Good. Immediately, cheers came from the crowd. Especially the Mo family disciples who were watching the battle, their eyes were shining. Without a doubt, Mo Yuxiang had already cultivated the Mo family's 6th-level secret technique, overlapping waves palm, to the martial master level of perfection. Relying on his astonishing speed, the superposition of 5 palms was at least 4 to 5 times stronger than a single palm. When he saw such a powerful attack, Chun Hao's pupils constricted abruptly, and his handsome face instantly erupted with an extremely cold aura. Bang bang. 2 loud bangs erupted from beneath Chun Hao's feet. He, who was already astonishingly fast, actually sped up again in an instant. Fight! The battle intent that was hidden in Chun Hao's bones erupted without restraint. He had originally wanted to keep a low profile before meeting Xiao Jihan, but because of Hao Yin and Wu Zi, it was destined that he could no longer keep a low profile. Since then, why should he fight of the battle of Mo of fighting? Fight! He fought to his heart's content. He fought without any restraint. Phew! At this moment, when Chun Hao let go of his mind and body and decided to fight to the death, an aura of disdain for the world was born from his handsome face. His resolute eyes and cold expression, coupled with his unstoppable aura, made Hao Lion Wuzi widen her beautiful eyes for the first time. Facing the powerful attack of Mo Yuxiang's 6th-grade secret technique, overlapping wave palm, everyone thought that Chun Hao would choose to avoid it. However, at this moment, they suddenly felt that they had underestimated Chun Hao high. When Mo Yuxiang's terrifying attack reached his chest in the blink of an eye, Chun Hao shouted and turned his palm into a fist. Bang, bang, bang. A series of dense and terrifying sonic booms resounded in everyone's ears at an alarming frequency. What was out of everyone's expectations was that the crushing defeat that they had imagined did not occur. Chun Hao did not use any of his ultimate skills, and only used the most basic fist technique. However, the speed of his punches was so fast that everyone could only see a series of afterimages. Only the dense sonic booms allowed everyone to realize just how fast it was. What was even more shocking was that Chun Hao's body, which was not very tall, did not retreat after the bright light red protective aura. Instead, he advanced and approached Mo Yuxiang like a hot knife through butter. How is this possible? This scene made everyone feel that it was inconceivable, especially Mo Yuxiang, who bore the brunt of the attack. He was even more shocked. Chun Hao's light red origin energy was clearly only a 3rd-grade martial master. However, it was so dense and pure that even he felt that he could not resist it. What made him feel even more terrified was that Chun Hao's attack speed was even faster than him. Mo family disciple who was famous for his speed. Bang, bang, bang. Although it took a long time to describe, in fact, it was only a flash of lightning and sparks. The two of them had begun to fight for the first time. In an instant, the terrifying sound of fists and feet colliding exploded. Under the immense pressure, Mo Yuxiang displayed the speed and strangeness of the Mo family's martial arts to the extreme. However, Chun Hao, who only knew the basic martial arts, used the simplest, most direct, and most effective attack to turn something rotten into something magical and caused Mo Yuxiang's strange attack to lose any effect. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at this unbelievable scene. Even Hao Yin and Wu Zi were so shocked that they could not help but open their cherry lips. In less than 2 minutes, Chun Hao's simple, violent, and direct punch, without any fancy moves, broke through Mo Yuxiang's layers of palm shadows. Bowing, twisting, and punching were done in one go. Accompanied by Chun Hao's short roar, it landed squarely on Mo Yuxiang's lower abdomen. Bang! With a dull bang. Mo Yuxiang was like a kite with a broken string. He could not even let out a scream as he flew out of the ring amidst the screams of the crowd. There was silence around the ring. Everyone stared blankly at Chun Hao, who was still maintaining his punching posture. At this moment, his fist was still surging with violent yuan qi. His teeth were still clenched, and his body was trembling violently. It was as if this punch had gathered all the strength in his body. At this moment, he was still immersed in the aftertaste of that shocking punch. The referee of the City Lord's residence was the first to regain his senses. With a trace of excitement, he shouted in a deep voice, "Number 44, Xiao family Xiao, Xianghao, victory, Xianghao, Xianghao." In an instant, with the Xiao family as the core, the audience quickly exploded into the strongest and most terrifying cheers since the start of the competition. Not to mention the big shots on the VIP platform. Even the contestants who were fighting in the other groups looked at the seventh ring in shock. In the stands, Lil Ling, Air, and a few other girls jumped up in excitement. They hugged each other tightly and screamed Chun Hao's name. Xiao Jian's beautiful little face also shone with a trace of excitement. However, her brows that had been tightly knitted during this period of time were unable to completely relax. During this period of time, because of Xiao Jihan and Chun Hao, an emotion that should not have appeared prematurely appeared in her heart. As the beloved daughter of the Xiao family's patriarch and the direct disciple of Old Man Xiao, she naturally knew the decision of Old Man Xiao and her father. This decision made her feel confused, uneasy, and nervous, just like when Old Man Xiao asked her who she hoped would win. She was unable to choose. Now, she was still unable to choose. Xiao Mei's eyes were wide open. She stared unblinkingly at Chun Hao, who was slowly walking towards her. Even Hao Lian and Wu Zi, who were sitting at the front of the contestant seats, had their eyes fixed on Chun Hao's movements. Chun Hao's face was calm and indifferent, as if he did not feel anything about the victory just now. "Senior sister, why are you looking at me like that?" After Chun Hao returned to his seat, Xiao Mei was still staring at Chun Hao. However, she did not say anything. It was fine if she looked from afar, but the more she looked at him, the more Chun Hao could not help but feel a little pain in his balls. He could not help but ask, "Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" "What explanation? What do you think?" "Keep pretending. I, your senior sister, wholeheartedly wanted to be your sparring partner. It's fine if you hide it from others, but with me?" Xiao Mei curled her lips, seemingly a little angry as she said this. Senior sister, I really did not hide anything from you. You also know that I became a Grade 3 Martial Master. After I became a Grade 3 Martial Master, we did not spar." "That's not right." Xiao Mei interrupted Chun Hao. "It was clearly not a Grade 3 Martial Master matter." "All right, let's talk about it when we get back. Everyone is watching us," Chun Hao said in a low voice. Second update. It's the weekend again. As usual, there will be a third update tomorrow. Tonight at 12 o'clock, the first update will be released. In the new week, I sincerely invite all the brothers and sisters who are watching AOT to come and support Dark Mountain. Even if it's just a click, it's fine. Please. Chapter 46. This is a new week. Friends, please help me open the next chapter and recommend it. Thank you. There was no suspense in the next 3 matches. How Lion Wuzzy, the second and third ranked disciples, all finished their matches within a minute, and the top 40 were determined. The boring matches with great disparity in strength were finally over. The referee did not waste any time. After quickly drawing lots, the matches began. Finally, when the sky was about to turn dark, the 5 rounds of elimination matches, 10 arenas, and 10 groups ended one after another. Chun Hao was worried that he would meet Hao Lion Wuzzy too early. The situation did not happen, and he successfully advanced to the top 5. The disciple in second place, who had just become a Grade 6 Martial Master, was unlucky enough to meet Hao Lion Wuzzy in the top 5 and was eliminated without any suspense. It was also that battle that finally allowed Chun Hao to see how powerful Hao Lion Wuzzy was. A Grade 6 Martial Master could not even last 3 moves against Hao Lion Wuzzy. Moreover, Chun Hao was clear that if Hao Lion Wuzzy wanted to, she could defeat her opponent in 1 move. After a day of competition, only Xiao Jihan and Chun Hao were left of the Xiao clan's 10 disciples. Tomorrow was the round-robin match for the top 5. After joining up with the Xiao clan's disciples, Chun Hao walked towards the Xiao clan's encampment amidst the congratulations of Xiao Jishan, Lil Ling and some other Xiao clan disciples. "Junior brother, don't think so much. How Lion Woozy is indeed not someone you can fight against. A grade 8 martial master is too strong. Your current results have already shaken the entire Cloud State City. Don't force yourself. No matter what, second place in the group shouldn't be a problem for you. After all, you've only been cultivating for half a year. Xiao Mei looked at Chun Hao, who seemed to be deep in thought, and could not help but comfort him. Hearing Xiao Mei's words, Chun Hao's brows relaxed. He grinned and said, "Senior sister, you're thinking too much. I'm thinking too much." How Lion Woozy is indeed very strong. However, I feel that her fan club is even stronger. With my current cultivation, I have no chance of winning. Even if I lose, it would be normal. What fan club? Xiao Mei was a little surprised. Ever since she came into contact with Chun Hao, she had heard several new terms. A fan club is also a group of supporters and admirers. Didn't you see how crazy the audience was every time she went on stage today? Let's not talk about this anymore. No matter if I win or lose, I will do my best to fight. As Chun Hao said this, he suddenly seemed to be talking to himself. Sigh, if only there were some more high-grade elixirs, ah? Xiao Mei was surprised. Junior brother, you couldn't have comprehended the barrier again? It seems so. It's a pity that I haven't tempered my origin power enough. Otherwise, I think I would be able to quickly step into the 4th grade of Martial Master. So, don't say that I'm hiding it from you. It was only when I started fighting with Mo Yuxiang that I suddenly realized it. Chen Hao seemed to have intentionally raised his voice a little. This caused the ears of Xiao Ding and the rest, who were walking in front, to tremble, especially Xiao Jihan. When Chun Hao saw the subtle changes in the crowd, his eyes flashed with joy. This time, he wasn't talking to Xiao Jihan, but to Xiao Ding. As Chun Hao had said, Hao Lian Wuzi basically had no chance of winning against him now. A grade 8 martial master was much stronger than Xiao Jihan. Moreover, although no one had forced Hao Lianwu to use her true strength in today's battle, Chun Hao's sharp intuition had sensed that there seemed to be a familiar energy on Hao Lianwu's body. This feeling was very strange, but it was real. As for what kind of energy it was, Chun Hao wasn't sure. He would probably only know after he had fought and forced Hao Lianwuzi to use it. At night, a full moon hung in the sky. The clear and cold moonlight sprinkled down on the bustling Cloud State City. All the taverns, tea houses, brothels, and other places were packed with people. Everyone was talking about today's competition with great interest. Without a doubt, Hao Lian Wuzi, Hao Lian Yiqing, Xiao Xianghao, and Xiao Jihan were the names that appeared the most frequently. After Chun Hao finished his meal, he went straight to his room. He sat cross-legged on his bed, and the faint moonlight poured through the window onto his delicate and handsome face. However, he wasn't cultivating. His black eyes emitted a faint glow under the moonlight. His brows were slightly furrowed, and he seemed to be deep in thought, as if he was waiting for something. Dong, dong, dong. Soft knocks on the door were finally heard, just as Chun Hao had expected. A smile appeared on his face as he stood up and opened the door. "Senior sister? Is there anything?" Xiao Mei's face flashed with excitement and joy. She didn't answer Chun Hao and instead walked into the room. After closing the door, she smiled mysteriously and whispered, "Guess what I brought you?" "A what?" Chun Hao seemed to be very surprised. Spiritual medicine. 10 grade 5 medicinal pills and 3 grade 6 medicinal pills. Although Xiao Mei wanted to whet Chun Hao's appetite, time was of the essence, and she said it directly. It can't be." This time, Chun Hao was really surprised. When he came back, he intentionally said it out loud for Xiao Ding to hear. He believed that since Xiao Ding and old Xiao had chosen him, they would spare no expense to nurture him. And now he needed it. There was no need to pretend to be virtuous. He believed that he would be able to repay this kindness 1,000 times in the future. But he didn't expect Xiao Ding to give him so much. 10 grade 5 medicinal pills were refined with 10 grade 5 spiritual medicine. 3 grade 6 medicinal pills were refined with 3 grade 6 spiritual medicine. Chun Hao had never seen a grade 5 medicinal pill before, not to mention grade 6 medicinal pills. Moreover, there were 3 of them. One had to know that the reward for the first inner disciple before the age of 20 was a grade 6 spiritual medicine, red refining fruit. Chunhao couldn't help but be surprised. Patriarch said that as long as you need it, just say the word. He will spare no expense to help you improve. When you need it, just let me know. A Xiang Hao. Although Patriarch didn't say, Senior Sister feels that I should tell you, what? These spiritual medicine are extremely precious to any family. These are Patriarch's savings for breaking through to martial emperor. Do you understand what Senior Sister means? I understand. Chunhao nodded and said in a deep voice, Go to the cultivation room and cultivate. Senior Sister will protect you. Xiaomei said as she nudged Chunhao. Okay. Chunhao didn't say anything else and walked directly to the cultivation room. After sitting cross-legged on the mat in the middle of the cultivation room, Chunhao carefully opened the jade bottle containing the grade 5 spiritual medicine. In his eyes, these were no longer spiritual medicine. They were old Xiao and Xiao Ding's hopes. This made Chunhao feel a little guilty. Although he had never thought of taking it for free, his relationship with the Xiao family was still based on mutual benefits. What the Xiao family valued was his potential and future. Their current investments and good karma were all based on future returns. It was also because of this that Chunhao intentionally said that he needed spiritual medicine. You give me the present, and I give you the future. It was a matter of course. But now, Xiao Ding's generous investment made Chunhao understand that this was beyond the scope of benefits. Taking a deep breath, Chunhao's mind was filled with the uncontrollable excitement of seeing spiritual medicine. He had originally wanted to take out a grade 5 spiritual medicine, but he couldn't help but take out 3 and swallow them. Boom, boom, boom. The strength of a level 5 medicinal pill was revealed the moment it was swallowed into his dantian. Although refining the medicinal pill would remove most of the violent elements of the spiritual medicine, Chunhao was only a martial master. A level 5 spiritual medicine would have a strong effect even on a martial monarch, not to mention a martial master. Moreover, Chunhao had swallowed 3 spiritual medicine at once. Almost in an instant, violent and pure energy was released from the 3 spiritual medicine. Even with Chunhao's strong physical body, he still felt a heart-wrenching pain, as if his dantian was about to explode. Luckily, after experiencing the terrifying pain of soul fusion, Chunhao's endurance was relatively high. Without any hesitation, in an instant, he activated the secret of longevity and began to refine his spiritual medicine. Bearing the intense pain of his physical body that was about to explode, he focused all his attention on refining the spiritual medicine. P.S. First update, all the brothers and sisters who support AOTON, please help me log into Qi and click on the next chapter. Those who are still reading, please vote for Wushan, please. Today's third update will explode. The second update should be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Also, thanks to Chuan Liang Wuzi, Passionate Love Chi Mo, Windflower Snow Moon Clear, Mo Ching Weasel 22, Dancing with the Wind Purple, Xiao Tian Bai, Fish That Can't Really Swim, Phone BE for their support. Thank you. Chapter 47. I'm putting my face in my pocket. I'm sincerely begging for recommendation tickets, member clicks, collection, tips, etc. Everything is taken care of. Wushan promises to marry Yuo. Intersection. Oh, using elemental energy to refine the body and awaken the body's potential is to refine all the cells and meridians in the body except for the brain. Once the refinement is completed, one can reach the martial emperor realm. As the violent energy from the 3 level 5 elixirs was refined, the pain that felt like his body was about to explode gradually disappeared from Chunhao's body. At this moment, Chunhao felt the subtle circulation of the majestic elemental energy in his body, and a trace of understanding appeared in his mind. Senior Mei's intent is to refine one's will and produce mental strength. Compared to elemental energy, mental strength is completely under the precise control of the intent and can be refined down to the smallest detail. The brain is the most mysterious and delicate part of the human body. Perhaps only under complete control of mental strength can one refine the cells in the brain and awaken the brain's potential. The reason why intent is so rare is because it requires the cultivator to be born with a certain amount of mental strength. Otherwise, it is impossible to take the first step of refinement. As for martial artists, although they are unable to use the violent elemental energy to refine the brain, after becoming a martial emperor, the meridians that run through the human brain are already connected. Through the circulation of the elemental energy in the meridians, it can naturally nourish the brain continuously until the condition to become intent is met. Then, one can begin to refine the brain. But why does an intent cultivate elemental energy to refine the body? Thinking of this, Chun Hao, who was still refining the elixirs, the figure of Cloud State City's governor, Li Ran, appeared in his mind. Chun Hao's senses were several times, or even dozens of times sharper than ordinary people. He could be sure that the intent Emperor Li Ran had already begun to refine his body. However, the feeling he gave was completely different from a martial artist's body. This made Chun Hao a little puzzled. He could only temporarily put aside the doubts in his heart and once again devote himself to refining the elixirs. Vigorous and pure elemental energy flowed through the meridians of the fourth level of the long life secret, continuously refining and nourishing the meridians and the surrounding cells. Buzz! Finally, just as the 3 level 5 medicinal pills were about to be exhausted, a rumbling sound came from his dantian. Chun Hao could clearly feel that his body was vibrating at a high frequency. It was also at this moment that the pure essence energy that was flowing along his meridians suddenly increased in speed by several times. The surging and vigorous origin energy was like enormous waves that crashed against the shore, and wave after wave crashed against the barrier that Chun had already comprehended. Boom! A series of explosions rang out as Chun Hao's vigorous essence force circulated crazily, causing the air in the entire cultivation room to explode and rumble unceasingly. It broke through just like that. Sitting cross-legged on Chun Hao's bed, Xiao Mei, who had stayed behind to protect Chun Hao, was suddenly awakened by the huge commotion coming from the cultivation room. Her charming eyes opened in surprise as she muttered in disbelief. Xiao Mei did not know that at this moment, on a towering tree a few meters away from Chun Hao's room, a figure let out a soft sigh of relief and muttered to himself, "It seems that the old ancestor is wise. This kid is really too abnormal. What a pity, what a pity. If the Yinzhou martial meet could be delayed for a month, even defeating Hao Lian and Wu Zi would not be impossible." This figure was Xiao Ding. Sparing no effort to help Chun Hao cultivate was what Old Man Xiao had instructed him to do. However, in the cultivation world, spiritual herbs were in short supply. Not to mention level 5 or level 6 spiritual herbs. Even level 3 or 4 spiritual herbs were difficult to buy in the trading market. After all, this was a world of martial artists. There were as many cultivators as there were hairs on a cow. If the spiritual herbs picked could not even satisfy one's own needs, who would sell them? 3 level 6 medicinal pills and 10 level 5 medicinal pills were all Xiao Ding's reserves for breaking through to Martial Emperor. Old Man Xiao said it was easy, but Xiao Ding's heart ached. Giving them to Chun Hao meant that the time needed for him to break through to Martial Emperor would be extended. However, now that he sensed Chun Hao's breakthrough, Xiao Ding suddenly felt that Old Man Xiao was right and that it was worth it. Just as Xiao Ding was about to leave, he was suddenly startled. He looked at a place 100 meters away from Chun Hao's courtyard. That was Xiao Jihan's residence. This kid, did he break through as well? Xiao Ding thought to himself in surprise. With a flash of his body, he transformed into a gust of wind and rapidly approached Xiao Jihan's room. At the same time, the powerful perception of someone who had 1 foot in the martial emperor realm silently spread out. Very good, very good. Jihan, what else do you have to worry about now? There's still 5 days before the group stage ends. The round-robin competition for the top 10 can only take place 5 times a day. As long as you don't meet the 2 people from the Hao family in advance, you still have a few days to cultivate. With the help of these spirit herbs, with your talent, it's very likely that you'll be the champion. I really didn't expect your Dongfang family to be a branch of the three great families of our Jinyuan kingdom. However, Jihan, I'm a member of the Shao family after all. Please tell your father that after this matter is settled, the elemental spirit cave will belong to your Dongfang family, and the Shao family will be mine. Don't worry, sixth elder. Without your nurturing over the past 3 years, I, Dongfang Han, wouldn't be where I am today. This time, I was able to obtain the help of the main family because of my cultivation and talent. My father will definitely keep his promise. However, you must be careful about this matter. You mustn't let Ji Yin know. It's been 3 years. To tell you the truth, I more or less have some true feelings for that girl. Don't worry. All right, I'll head over first. Xiao Ding never would have imagined that he would hear such a shocking secret from inadvertently eavesdropping. It was no wonder that the Dongfang family, who should have come to visit, didn't come to participate in the Yun State martial meet. It was no wonder that with the Dongfang family's wealth and good relations with the 4 great families of Yun State, the Dongfang family would let Dongfang Han, who was Xiao Jihan, choose the Xiao family. Even with Xiao Ding's strong mental fortitude, he was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. One of the 3 great families of the Jinyuan kingdom, the Dongfang family. Xiao Jihan's main family, the Dongfang family, was actually a branch of the Dongfang family, one of the 3 great families, and their target was the Xiao family's elemental spirit cave. Although he didn't know what Xiao Bo and Xiao Jihan's father were plotting, Xiao Ding obtained a lot of information from their short conversation. Xiao Ding took a deep breath and pondered for a moment with furrowed brows. Suppressing the shock in his heart, he quickly flew toward Xiao Guan's room. Xiao Guan was Xiao Ding's trusted aide. After giving Xiao Guan a few simple instructions, Xiao Ding flew out of the Xiao family's encampment as fast as lightning. There was still more than 2 hours before the start of the competition. With Xiao Ding's cultivation, it was enough for him to return to the Xiao family and return. He couldn't leave this matter to anyone else, so he had to do it personally. Why isn't the patriarch here yet? Early in the morning, when Chun Hao and the other Xiao family disciples gathered and prepared to set off, the patriarch Xiao Ding still hadn't arrived. The 6th elder frowned and asked. The patriarch said last night that his cultivation has reached a critical juncture. He told us to go on our own and that he will arrive before the competition starts. The cold-faced Xiao Guan said in a deep voice without the slightest change in his expression. Then let's set off, Ji Yin and you disciples. The reason I brought you here to watch the competition is not for you to play. You have to observe and learn diligently in order to gain something. In the future, the Xiao family will have to rely on you youngsters. And as long as you cultivate diligently and perform well, this elder will focus on nurturing you. Do you understand? The 6th elder said sanctimoniously with a kind smile on his face. He was in a very good mood. Although he couldn't show anything at the moment, with his status as the 6th elder, educating these youngsters and nurturing some loyal subordinates for him after he took power was no problem. Xiao Guan's face was cold, and he didn't have the slightest reaction to the 6th elder's pretense. Although he didn't know why the patriarch rushed back to the Xiao family in the middle of the night, the fact that the patriarch hid it from the 6th elder and the others and let Xiao Guan know meant that it was definitely a big matter. And it was very likely related to Xiao Jihan and the 6th elder. After all, as Xiao Ding's trusted aide, he more or less knew about Xiao Ding and old Zhao's decision. Martial arts venue. When Chun Hao and the others arrived at the martial arts venue, the spectator stand were already full. Even the 10-sided arena that was used for the previous day's battle had been turned into a spectator stand and was filled with spectators. The top 5 would be in a round-robin competition. Because the difference in strength between the contestants was not large, there was a possibility that someone would be injured in every battle. Therefore, the competition couldn't be like the previous day's elimination round, where there were consecutive battles. Every day, one person in each group would have a bye, so there were only 2 matches. There were 10 groups, so there were only 20 matches in total. Therefore, All the matches were concentrated in the main arena. This way, the spectators would be able to enjoy watching and not miss out on any exciting matches. Before the competition started, Xiao Ding, who was the vice leader of the arbitration team, arrived on time. As for Chun Hao, he was lucky enough to draw a bye. There were 5 people in each group, and each person would only get by once. When the lots were drawn tomorrow, he would be the first to draw. If he drew a bye, he would have to draw another lot. It had to be said that being the first to draw a bye was very lucky for Chun Hao. Chun Hao informed Xiao Guan and returned to the Xiao clan's encampment with Xiao Mei. Although Chun Hao also wanted to see the contestants' performance, what he needed more now was to cultivate. Last night, even though Chun Hao had successfully advanced to a rank 4 martial master, the huge pressure brought by Hao Lian Wuzi still didn't decrease. With his cultivation as a rank 4 martial master, Chun Hao still didn't have the confidence to win. Therefore, before he met Hao Lian Wuzi, he had to improve himself as quickly as possible. Only by increasing his cultivation could he truly increase his combat strength. Second update. If you have a recommendation vote, please vote for Wu Shan. Thank you. Chapter 48. Looking for members to click. Looking for recommendation tickets. Looking for favorites. My new book needs everyone's support. Please, please, brothers and sisters. A grade 8 martial master. Xiao Jihan from Xiao clan has actually advanced to a grade 8 martial master. He really hit it well. The Xiao clan has finally risen. The strength that Xiao Jihan displayed just now is probably not inferior to Hao Lian Wuzi and Hao Lian Yiqing. It's very likely that he has already advanced to a grade 8 martial master. Yes, he's really powerful. His talent is probably not inferior to Xiao Xianghao's. On the first day of the round-robin competition, Xiao Jihan became the topic of discussion in the entire venue. A peak grade 6 martial master from the Hao clan was actually blasted out of the stage by Xiao Jihan's seemingly casual palm strike, causing him to faint from serious injuries. That was a peak grade 6 martial master. Furthermore, he was a disciple of the Haoyan clan who was known for their defense. It was certain that even a peak grade 7 martial master would not be able to defeat that grade 6 martial master so easily. However, Xiao Jihan had done it. That casual palm strike had truly displayed the shocking cultivation of a grade 8 martial master. Furthermore, it was definitely not something that someone who had just advanced to a grade 8 martial master could do. Chun Hao, who had left early, was at the Xiao clan's encampment. He had Xiao Mei use all her strength as a grade 9 martial master to battle with Hao Lian Wuzi for an entire day. According to Xiao Mei's estimation, although she was a grade 9 martial master, she was probably not a match for Hao Lian Wuzi. Therefore, if Chun Hao wanted to defeat Hao Lian Wuzi, he had to defeat her in her peak state. After an entire day, unfortunately, although Chun Hao gave it his all, he still lost in the end. After learning from Xiao Jishan, Lil Ling and the others that Xiao Jihan had advanced to a grade 8 martial master and might not be inferior to Hao Lian Wuzi, Chun Hao became even more excited. That night, he swallowed another 3 grade 5 pills. However, it was a pity that he only managed to slightly increase his origin power through tempering. No matter how talented he was, he would not be able to comprehend the barrier between a grade 4 martial master and a grade 5 martial master in a day. A genius was a combination of 99% sweat and 1% talent. Although Chun Hao's talent was much stronger, it was not something that could be accomplished overnight. Time. He still needed time. The morning breeze blew gently, the sun rose from the east, and the sun and moon alternated. This was an unchanging law that would never change because of people's wishes. After all, one day was too short. Chun Hao finally stepped onto the stage again and drew lots. His only hope was that he wouldn't meet Hao Lian Wuzi for the time being because he wasn't ready yet. He, who was born with pride, would never allow himself to fail. If he was given more time, he believed that he would definitely be able to do it. However, Chun Hao's good luck seemed to have come to an end. Hao Lian Wuzi, when he saw that Hao Lian Wuzi had drawn the same number as him, Chun Hao took a deep breath. His black eyes shone brightly, and his gaze intertwined with Hao Lian Wuzi's. Hiss, hiss, hiss. What Chun Hao and Hao Lian Wuzi did not expect was that the moment their eyes met for the first time, both of them were shocked at the same time. It was as if electric currents were born in their bodies at the same time. A very strange feeling appeared in their hearts out of nowhere. Chun Hao frowned slightly, and Hao Lian Wuzi raised her eyebrows slightly. What's going on? Hao Lian Wuzi and Chun Hao avoided each other's gaze at the same time, and each of them pondered in their hearts. It seems it's the energy in her body. It's just a third-grade martial master. What do I have to fear? Hao Lian Wuzi's eyebrows relaxed. 8th grade martial master. Do I, Chun Hao, have to admit defeat? At worst. Chun Hao's eyes flashed coldly. He bit his lips lightly and secretly made up his mind. Since he had drawn the lot, he could only fight. There was no way back, and he could only move forward. It's destined to cause trouble. But it's better than a man. Chun Hao's gaze swept across the audience who were staring at Hao Lian Wuzi with infatuation. His furrowed eyebrows also relaxed. He shrugged slightly and said to himself, "It's good that I can win. Why do I have to worry so much? This isn't me, Chun Hao. I'm Li Yuan, Madman Li Yuan. When did I care about what others say? Junior, Hao Yin's family is our mortal enemy. Since you can't win, remember, when the time comes, don't fight recklessly. She's not senior and will not show mercy. As long as there's a chance, she will definitely injure you severely or even cripple you. So if you can't win, admit defeat immediately." "Okay," Chun Hao responded and didn't say anything more. He looked at the main arena that everyone was looking at. First round, first group, Sima Jianyun from the Sima family versus Li Shaojian from the Li family. Contestants, please come to the arena. When the referee's voice resounded throughout the entire arena, boom, boom, 2 figures suddenly flew up from the contestants' seats and jumped onto the main arena in an instant. Li family. Isn't Buttface in the Li family? When Chun Hao heard the referee announce the contestants' names, he frowned slightly and thought to himself, it should be this Li family. Buttface was Chun Hao's best friend. It could be said that he was able to enter the Shao family largely because of Buttface's help. Without Buttface, he wouldn't have been able to participate in the Shao family's test. Without Buttface's help, he and his family would probably still be homeless. Only friends who could go through thick and thin together were true friends who could go through thick and thin together. Therefore, even though Chun Hao was no longer the Chun Hao of the past, their brotherhood hadn't changed at all. Since Buttface had also embarked on the path of cultivation, Chun Hao couldn't ignore him. Boom, boom. The violent fluctuation of origin energy interrupted Chun Hao's thoughts. Although the fierce-looking Sima Jianyun was only 17 years old, his face, which was as fierce as his father's, made him look like he was 30 years old. However, this guy's cultivation was much better than his appearance. As the #1 genius of the Sima family, it wasn't enough to make him look fierce. As one of the top 10 contestants, Sima Jianyun didn't even need to use his sword. He relied on his violent and vigorous origin energy to easily make his opponent admit defeat in 3 to 4 minutes of battle. Next, the 2 contestants from the second group entered the arena. The 2 of them were comparable in strength. In the end, one of them was seriously injured, while the other had minor injuries. In the third group, Hao Lian easily defeated his opponent. In the fourth group, Mo Yui won in 2 minutes. There was basically no suspense in the top 10 groups of the 4 great families. Furthermore, they were arranged in the first group to enter the arena. Because this was a competition where the difference in strength was slightly larger, there wasn't much suspense in the outcome. Soon, it was the 6th group's turn. What surprised Chun Hao was that Shao Jihan had won many fans in just one day. It had to be said that Shao Jihan, who was handsome and highly talented, and whose family was the richest in Yinzhou, had imperceptibly covered him with a layer of mini halo. It was natural for him to be sought after. When Shao Jihan once again defeated his opponent with a casual move, it triggered the first small climax since the start of the competition. Cheers resounded throughout the entire arena. However, no matter if it was Hao Liani or Hao Liani, they all looked at Xiao Jihan with a trace of disdain. Especially Hao Liani, who looked as if he was looking at Lei Feng. Without a doubt, if he was Xiao Jihan, he would definitely not reveal that he had advanced to become a grade 8 martial master, let alone be so arrogant. The key to victory was to keep a low profile and reveal himself at the most crucial moment. However, Chun Hao expressed that he understood, especially when he saw Xiao Jihan looking at him with arrogance and disdain after he won. He understood even more. Under Chun Hao's repeated attacks, it was already commendable that this fellow could endure until now to fly into a rage. 7th round, 7th group. Hao Liani from the Hao family versus Xiao Xianghao from the Xiao family. Please enter the arena. When a referee called out Hao Liani and Chun Hao's names, the audience, who were already cheering for Xiao Jihan, instantly exploded with even more enthusiasm. Hao Liani, the #1 genius beauty in Cloud State City, resounded throughout the entire arena. Even Chun Hao, who had become a celebrity and gained the recognition of many people, was completely submerged under Hao Liani's great charm. Looking at the pairs of crazy eyes, Chun Hao actually curled up into a devilish smile at this moment. He really wanted to know if he would be drowned in the saliva of such a huge legion of fans when they saw how he fought against Hao Liani Bang. Chun Hao stomped his feet on the ground, and his body instantly shot up into the sky like a cannonball. At the same time, a majestic battle intent spread out from his body. In contrast to Chun Hao, Hao Liani's beautiful figure was as light as a dancing fairy, landing gracefully on the arena. For pairs of eyes met each other. Streaks of electric sparks that no one could see or feel stimulated their bodies and minds. Both of them could see this feeling from each other's eyes. However, neither of them would say it out loud. Begin. Following the referee's shout, everyone thought that Hao Liani and Chun Hao would act like the others and immediately attack. But what made everyone feel strange was that both of them actually stared into each other's eyes with bright eyes, and their expressions were calmer than the other. Although the battle intent from both of them was rapidly rising, this scene was indeed out of everyone's expectations. Chun Hao's reaction wasn't strange. After all, Hao Liani's beautiful appearance would cause any male disciple to be stunned. But why didn't Hao Liani attack? Could it be that a beauty meeting a genius and her heart was moved? That wasn't possible. Hao Liani was already Hao Liani's fiancée. Although Chun Hao was a super genius and was exceptionally handsome, he was only a 13-year-old kid. It wasn't enough to move Hao Liani's heart. So why was that? Even Hao Liani frowned slightly when he saw this scene. You'd better admit defeat. At this moment, Hao Liani opened her red lips for the first time since the start of the competition. Her faint and ethereal voice was like the tinkling of a clear spring in people's ears. It was extremely moving. Tasting it carefully, it was like a gentle breeze and drizzle, but also like the clear spring water, cleansing the heart. Third update. My throat is hoarse from shouting. Dear friends, can you hear that? Please give me some support. I really need it. I really need it. Thank you. I recommend a friend to recommend the new work of the world-destroying serpent, the Great Master. It's a very good book. If you're interested, please help to collect it. Thank you. It's on the direct link. Chapter 49. How Lion Wuzi's voice alone was enough to mesmerize countless young disciples. They could not help but think that if he was Chun Hao, he would definitely admit defeat. How could he have the nerve to refuse such a beautiful woman? How could he reject her? How could he reject her? Especially since Chun Hao was no match for her. How could a grade 3 martial master fight her? Although it was extremely abnormal to be able to defeat a grade 6 martial master, the difference between a grade 6 martial master and a grade 8 martial master was not small. So what if he admitted defeat? It was straightforward, and no one would criticize him. Naturally, the vast majority of people thought that Chun Hao would admit defeat. However, Chun Hao's handsome and masculine face didn't have the slightest change in his expression when he heard such a beautiful voice. I might not lose. Why should I admit defeat? Chen Hao said calmly. His voice was also indifferent. However, unlike Hao Lion Wuzzy, Chen Hao's voice was filled with a cold determination. It was as if he was telling everyone that the beauty in front of him, who could make any young man kneel before her, was only an opponent in his eyes. An opponent that was no different from an ordinary girl, or even a man. That was all. Hao Lion Wuzzy raised her eyebrows slightly. She continued to look straight at Chen Hao and said, I gave you a chance. Since you don't want it, I won't hold back. Hao Lion Wuzzy had indeed given Chen Hao a chance. Of course, she was also giving herself a chance. The head of the Haolian family, Hao Lianlei, had already cautioned that as long as they met Chen Hao, they were to find an opportunity to severely injure or even kill him. The most basic requirement was to destroy his cultivation. For such a super genius, especially in the opposing Shao family, as long as he existed, he would evolve into a powerful and terrifying existence that the Haolian family could not resist. As for the life and death battle between Chen Hao and Shao Jihan, the head of the Haolian family, Hao Lianlei, felt that it was child's play. He did not doubt that even if Shao Ding went against the rules of martial arts, he would not let Chen Hao die in Shao Jihan's hands. However, Hao Lianwuzi had asked Chen Hao to admit defeat at the very beginning, because for some unknown reason, Chen Hao's calm, deep, and piercingly cold gaze and the surging battle intent emitted from his body caused her to feel danger from the depths of her heart. He could not help but blurt it out. When she said it, she regretted it a little, because if Chen Hao really admitted defeat, then how could she complete the task given to her by the patriarch? Bring it on. Isn't your Haolian clan famous for its defense? Today, I will let you experience the secret of our Shao clan's ancestor. I want to see if your Haolian clan's defense is stronger or if our Shao clan's defense is stronger. But you're a woman, so please don't mind. On the arena, there are no men or women, only opponents. Chen Hao stared at Hao Lianwuzi without any emotion in his eyes and said coldly. However, but Chen Hao's words made everyone baffled. Even Shao Ding had a bewildered look too. When did the old ancestor have a secret that was not passed down? As the descendant of a Shao clan and the patriarch of a Shao clan, how could he not know? A secret that is not passed down. Patriarch Shao, your genius is very arrogant. Don't tell me he really thinks that a grade 3 martial master could defeat our Shao Wu? What a joke. Shao Wu hates people who do not know the immensity of heaven and earth the most. If anything happens later, don't blame our Haolian clan. Huh. Hao Lianlei stroked his long beard and said eccentrically. Something happens? Patriarch Hao, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid it's your task. Is it? I really want to do that. But if old man gave it, would Shao Wu let him admit defeat? What a joke. Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with your petty heart. Your Shao clan is not even in old man's eyes. Hao Lianlei said disdainfully and arrogantly. Just as Shao Ding was about to explode in anger, Li Ran, who was sitting in the middle, suddenly chuckled. He waved his hand between the two and said, This battle should be very interesting. That little fellow is not simple. Li Ran's words caused the 4 patriarchs and the members of the arbitration team to be slightly shocked. Li Ran, who had a scholarly temperament and the demeanor of an immortal, was at the Intent Emperor realm. He was the undisputed #1 expert in Cloud State County. Furthermore, an Intent Emperor realm expert's senses were far beyond what a martial artist could reach. Since Li Ran had said so, it was definitely not an exaggeration. That Chen Hao definitely had some hidden strength. This caused a slight change in everyone's thinking. Originally, they had the same thoughts as Hao Lianlei. They thought that Chen Hao was the kind of genius who was arrogant and did not know how to endure. Otherwise, he would not have agreed to a life and death battle with Shao Jihan, an opponent who completely surpassed him. Even more so, he would not have fearlessly challenged Hao Lianwu, who was even stronger than Shao Jihan, despite knowing the enmity between the Haolian clan and the Shao clan. Hiss! Just as the big shots of the arbitration team were shocked, Chen Hao and Hao Lianwu's mutual appreciation finally ended. After Hao Lianwu's body flashed with a dazzling and majestic protective aura, there was no violent roar. Her entire body was like a gust of wind, and in a flash, she floated in front of Chun Hao. Thousand Phantom Palm. Chun Hao's eyes suddenly narrowed. Thousand Phantom Palm was a level 7 secret technique. It was much stronger than the level 6 secret technique of the Mo clan, Overlapping Waves Palm. The circulation of the elemental energy in the meridians was extremely complicated. Without excellent aptitude, it was impossible to successfully cultivate it. At the highest level, this secret technique could increase one's attack power by 7 times. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was the 4 words Thousand Phantom Palm. When the palm struck out, there were thousands of changes. Layers of palm shadows, illusory and real, made it impossible for the opponent to determine which palm was the real one. Looking at Chun Hao, who was completely enveloped by Hao Lianwu's palm shadows, Xiao Ding suddenly frowned. Even he did not expect that Hao Lianwu, who was only a martial master, could actually cultivate the Thousand Phantom Palm, which could only be cultivated by a martial emperor. What made Xiao Ding even more worried was that although Chun Hao was in a fighting posture, he did not activate his protective aura. Could it be that in the face of Hao Lianwu, a level 8 martial master, this kid wanted to use violence to curb violence like he did to Mo Yuxiang? Not bad. At the same time, Li Ran, who was beside him, unexpectedly spoke again. Just as the crowd was still trying to figure out who Li Ran was referring to, Chun Hao, in the arena, moved the moment the palm shadows were about to reach him. Luck, silent like a virgin, moving like a fleeing rabbit, facing Hao Lianwu's layers of palm shadows and huge pressure, Chun Hao's body did not move at all. Only his contracted pupils allowed the crowd to see that Chun Hao was trying to catch Hao Lianwu's real attack. And now he moved. Relying on his natural advantage of speed, he moved as fast as lightning. No one understood why Chun Hao did not dodge at the beginning and allowed Hao Lianwu's palm shadows to envelop him. Could it be that he could really lock onto the real, killing move of Hao Lianwu's palm shadows? Ancient Chinese martial arts were extensive and profound. The highest level of defense was offense. However, that was under the situation of the same realm. When facing an opponent who was completely beyond one's realm, one could only use true defense. The ancient martial arts lost art, Golden Snake Coiling Hand, was the best defensive lost art in ancient Chinese martial arts that used the weak to suppress the strong. Lock was the highest level of the Golden Snake Coiling Hand. Lock, lock, lock. Lock onto the attack, lock onto the opponent, lock onto everything. This was Chun Hao's only way to deal with Hao Lianwu. It was also the method that Chun Hao had been considering whether to use after he and Hao Lianwu were assigned to the same group. These 2 days, he desperately tried to raise his realm. It was nothing more than wanting to rely on his real strength to defeat Hao Lianwu. However, the time was too short. Now, he could only choose this method. Moreover, Chun Hao believed that success or failure depended on the first move. As long as he could successfully lock on a Hao Lianwu with the first move, he would have the hope of winning, because Hao Lianwu was a woman, and she was still a virgin. Pa pa pa, boom boom boom. The crisp sound of body contact and the terrifying sound of origin energy explosion resounded in the entire arena almost at the same time. The expected defeat did not happen, but a scene that stunned everyone appeared. This, huh? No way. F***CK. A variety of exclamations erupted from the entire venue's grandstand. Countless people's faces were filled with shock, disbelief, and unimaginable. Many of them were extremely envious or extremely angry as they stood up. Bastard! In front of the arena, Hao Lianqing, who was originally sitting on the contestant seat, was instantly enraged. He stood up with a flushed face. It was certain that if this was not a competition, as Hao Lianwu's fiancé, he would definitely rush up and hack Chun Hao into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. Because what Chun Hao was doing now was something that he, Hao Lianqing, had always wanted to do but could not do. Lock, lock, lock. Lock, lock, lock. Chun Hao endured Hao Lianwu's violent origin energy explosion. It was only a short moment of contact, but blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Even the clothes on his body were torn in many places by the origin energy explosion. However, Chun Hao clenched his teeth. There was only one obsession in his heart. Lock. His body was like a snake coiling around Hao Lianwu's graceful body. His hands were locked around hers, and his legs were wrapped around hers. No matter how much Hao Lianwu frantically circulated her essence force, he was like a dog-skin plaster, unable to be shaken off. Hao Lianwu Zi was a young girl. Although the clan head had appointed the engagement, she and Hao Lianyi had never held each other's hands, not to mention being entangled together in such a shameful way. Just like that, her pure body was possessed and sullied by Chun Hao. Moreover, it was in front of the major forces of the Cloud State and tens of thousands of spectators. Hao Lianwu Zi was both embarrassed and angry. Her beautiful little face was already red, and her clear eyes were even redder. Her mind seemed to have stopped working, and there was only one thought in her mind. Get rid of him, kill him, cut him into pieces. First update. Thank you to my 11 friends, Passionate Love Nan Mingzi XX, Meng EXX, Feng Bai, Mo Yue, Chun Yu, Chuan Liang Wuzi, Wat Cower, Ninth Dusk, Fish That Can't Really Swim, Book Friend 111108143302605, and especially those who support Dark Mountain with their gifts every day. Thank you very much for giving Dark Mountain such a great motivation. My new book really needs your encouragement and support. Dark Mountain is a full-time writer, and I rely on this to make a living. Whether the results are good or bad will have a great impact on Dark Mountain. That's why, my friends who are reading Proud Heaven, even if it's just during the free period for the public to access the starting point, click on the chapters and cast a free recommendation vote. It's all showing your support for Dark Mountain. This is also the source of motivation for Dark Mountain to write. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 50. The dignified 8th grade martial master Hao Lianwuzi's heart was in a mess. The only thing she knew was to violently release her origin energy and attack randomly. Pa pa pa. Chun Hao threw out a hand and wrapped it around Hao Lian's body. He threw out a leg and quickly wrapped it around Hao Lian's body again. The highest level of the golden snake coiling hand, lock, was displayed by Chun Hao to the fullest. He became a real dog skin plaster and stuck tightly to Hao Lian's body. However, even so, the woman who was embarrassed and angry still exploded with a terrifying strength, causing Chun Hao to use all his strength. Chun Hao could clearly feel that the injuries on his body were getting more and more serious. Even his internal organs were severely shaken, but he had to persevere. 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 Pa pa pa. Everyone stared blankly at the two people entangled together. At first, they were shocked by Chun Hao's shameless and strange defense method, but now they were shocked by Chun Hao's use of a technique that they had never heard of before. Everyone couldn't help but think, if they were locked by Chun Hao like this, what would they do? No one knew the answer. Because no one had a solution, Xiao Mei, who was in the stands, was blushing and her delicate body was trembling. It was only at this moment that Xiao Mei finally understood what Chun Hao meant when he said something like fan club, and what method should I use, and so on. He also finally understood what kind of method Chun Hao had used to make him use the strength of a 9th grade martial master. And after fighting for an entire day, he had been beaten black and blue by him. In the end, he had said, I can only use that method. She also finally understood why, when she asked him to use that method to fight with her, he wouldn't do it no matter what. Everything was like this. However, you are a woman, so please don't mind. On the stage, there are no men or women, only opponents. Looking at Chun Hao, whose mouth was full of blood but whose eyes were firm and whose lips were tightly clenched, and the scene of Hao Lian and Wu Zi struggling crazily and enduring attacks again and again. Many people recalled the words Chun Hao had said before the battle began. He had taken advantage of Hao Lian Wu Zi, and stuck close to her delicate body that countless young men dreamed of. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of wretchedness in his eyes. There was only locking onto his opponent. Everyone could imagine what kind of shocking destructive power Hao Lian Wu Zi's violent essence force had, and Chun Hao had withstood it all. For Chun Hao and Hao Lian, a few minutes felt like a century. As time passed, the attacks of Hao Lian Wu Zi, who was struggling madly with her origin energy, became weaker and weaker. Obviously, her origin energy was about to be exhausted. Similarly, Chun Hao, who had activated all his origin energy to protect his body and increase his strength to lock Hao Lian and Wu Zi, was also on the verge of collapse. No, I can't lose. I can't. I want to kill him, kill him, kill him. Hao Lian Wu Zi's crimson-red eyes gradually regained clarity as her origin energy was exhausted. Tears of humiliation welled up in her eyes, and her furious voice roared in her heart. When had she, a 16-year-old girl, suffered such humiliation? Even though Chun Hao wasn't even 13 years old, his figure was already that of a young man. Moreover, being humiliated wasn't enough. Could it be that she was going to lose this battle? This was something she absolutely couldn't tolerate. The last trace of reason finally completely disappeared under the enormous pressure and humiliation of being on the verge of defeat. Hiss hiss. The trace of profound energy hidden deep within Hao Lian Wu Zi's dantian at this moment, when she was on the verge of defeat, finally erupted without restraint. It was just a trace, but following Hao Lian Wu Zi's activation, the originally gentle energy that seemed to be nourishing her dantian at all times suddenly burst out like a river bursting a dam, a mountain torrent erupting. In an instant, monstrous waves surged violently out of her dantian, as if it had transformed into a sharp sword, directly piercing towards Chun Hao, who was stuck close to her back. Body to body, dantian to dantian, Hao Lian Wu Zi knew that success or failure depended on this one move. If she succeeded, Chun Hao's dantian would rupture and his cultivation would be crippled. At that time, she would be able to easily break free from Chun Hao's entanglement and immediately kill him, ruthlessly kill him, disregarding the rules, killing him even if he admitted defeat, killing anyone who tried to stop her. Only in this way could she protect her secret, a secret that no one knew about. Because the two of them were so close to each other, no one saw Hao Lian Wu Zi releasing this energy. Everyone only saw the two's movements becoming smaller and smaller, but the city lord Li Ran, who was sitting in the middle of the platform, slightly narrowed his eyes. At that moment, the air in front of his eyes was like water ripples, slightly twisting. Boom, boom, boom. Chun Hao and Hao Lian Wu Zi were the same. They were already at the point of exhaustion, but he knew that at least they would not lose this battle, because Hao Lian Wu Zi's struggle was also becoming weaker and weaker. As long as they could hold on for a little longer, everything should be over. But at this moment, Chun Hao's sharp senses suddenly sensed that the mysterious energy on Hao Lian Wu Zi's body, which was able to trigger an electric arc between the two of them, suddenly became countless times stronger. Before Chun Hao could react, a piercing pain came from his dantian. In just an instant, that energy seemed to have turned into a raging sea in his dantian, violently slamming against the surrounding dantian walls. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Chun Hao felt as if he had swallowed countless high-grade elixirs at once, almost bursting his dantian in an instant. Instantly, Chun Hao felt an unprecedented sense of danger. At this moment of life and death, Chun Hao did not have time to think and did not have time to think. The mysterious ice chi hidden in his body exploded in his dantian with a boom. An extremely cold aura instantly filled his entire dantian, and the raging waves froze in an instant, as if they had condensed into solid ice at this moment. Hao Lian Wu Zi, whose mind and energy were connected as one, suddenly widened her eyes in horror. At the moment when the entire sea was about to condense into solid ice, she suddenly retracted back into Hao Lian Wu Zi's dantian as fast as lightning, mysterious ice chi. Hao Yin Wuzi's final trump card was so easily defeated by Chun Hao. At the same time, Hao Yin Wuzi's heart was also defeated. A sense of despair surfaced in her heart. With only a trace of strength left, she stopped struggling and sadly closed her beautiful eyes. 2 lines of sparkling tears flowed down her beautiful face. She had lost. The one who had lost was not only the competition, but also herself. She had lost completely. Keep a secret, or kill me. Hao Yin Wuzi, who had already been pinned down by Chun Hao, closed her eyes tightly. Her beautiful face suddenly twisted slightly, and she turned to Chun Hao's ear. Using a determined voice, she said faintly. Chun Hao, who had exposed a profound Bing Qi, was in a state of mind that was violently fluctuating. He was very clear that if Hao Yin Wuzi did not die, he would be a great threat to him, and it might even be a fatal threat. On this point, old Xiao and Xiao Ding had cautiously reminded him. But the sparkling tears on Hao Yin Wuzi's beautiful face, the look of despair, and the words she suddenly said, made Chun Hao frown slightly. After being stunned for a short while, Chun Hao, who was also on the verge of collapse, made a decision. His body loosened, and he rolled to one side from Hao Yin Wuzi's body. It was the word "keep a secret" that made Chun Hao, who was hesitating, make a decision for Chun Hao. Chun Hao was very clear that even in the situation where the two of them were close together, there was not much hope of using the mysterious ice chi to kill Hao Yin Wuzi, because the mysterious ice chi in his dantian could destroy Hao Yin Wuzi's energy. It should be the water attribute energy of the 5 elements. But it did not mean that when he attacked Hao Yin Wuzi's dantian, he would have the upper hand. And even if he could succeed, this was obviously a battle to see who could last until the end. How could anyone die? He was only locked. If he died, it would be him dying under Hao Yin Wuzi's struggle. He could not explain it, and there was no reason. This was one of the reasons. Secondly, Chun Hao used this kind of wretched battle method. In the end, it was blasphemous first, and he used Hao Yin Wuzi's virgin identity. Otherwise, if it was any other wind person with the same cultivation, how could they lose their cool and fall into madness? Then the one who lost or died in the end would be him. Even if the current Chun Hao's heart was like a boulder in ice, he still more or less felt a little guilty towards Hao Yin Wuzi, especially when he saw Hao Yin Wuzi's expression of despair and tears. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, in the quiet martial arts arena, crisp clapping sounds came from the rostrum. City Lord Li Ran, who was sitting on the rostrum, actually had a faint, kind smile on his face. He stared at the 2 people who seemed to have exhausted all their strength, and took the lead to clap his hands, saying, "Not bad, not bad. The 2 of you are very good. How about this round be considered draw? Of course, if the 2 of you still have the strength to fight, you can continue." The matter should have been the referee, but as the chairman of the arbitration group, Li Ran actually directly spoke. The expression on his face was obviously extremely admiring of Chun Hao and Hao Yin Wuzi. City Lord. Chun Hao and Hao Yin Wuzi didn't say anything, and also didn't have the strength to speak. Especially Chun Hao, whose tensed-up nerves, after heaving a sigh of relief, instantly, his entire body felt like it was falling apart. There was no place that wasn't painful, so how would he have the strength to speak? And the despairing Hao Yin Wuzi, how would she have the mood to speak? But on the rostrum, Hao Yin family head Hao Yin Lei, who was sitting beside Li Ran, stood up with a furious expression. Such shameless. How could it be considered a draw? This kid is simply the scum of the martial arts world. That's not right. Li Ran, who is always indifferent, actually smiled at this moment and directly refuted Hao Yin Lei's words, saying, "This is an extremely powerful and strange defensive unique skill. Unique skills are only differentiated by grade, and there's no distinction between nobility and lowliness. Furthermore, what Xiao Xianghao said is right. On the arena, there's no male or female, only opponents. Furthermore, this kid is only 13 years old. How can we look at this battle with prejudice? This old man thinks that this will be a very exciting showdown. Second update. Seeking recommendation votes. Collection. Chapter 51. That's right. I agree with the city lord. Xiao Ding said loudly at the first moment. He was very excited in his heart. Even he didn't think that the city lord Li Ran would take the initiative to speak up, and from his words, he thought highly of Chun Hao. This was something that had never happened in the Cloud State martial meet in the past. This is the most interesting defensive lost art that I've ever seen. In a short moment, the people of the arbitration team made their stance clear. Not to mention that what Li Ran said made sense. Even if it didn't make sense, it still made sense. The Hellion clan was powerful, but no matter how powerful they were, they couldn't be more powerful than the City Lord residents. Although the City Lord residents didn't have a superior and subordinate relationship with the various powers, the City Lord residence was the true core of a region. They didn't care about the small matters, but look at the big matters. I didn't think that old Master Xiao was still hiding such a powerful lost art. It's really shocking. Patriarch Xiao, what's the name of this lost art? And what level of cultivation technique is it? A member of the arbitration team asked. This is the old ancestor's secret. Even I don't know. Xiao Ding was embarrassed in the face of everyone's questioning. He was the dignified patriarch of the Xiao clan, but he didn't even know his clan's martial arts. It was really too embarrassing. He really didn't know when the old ancestor had hidden such a strange martial art. He even seriously doubted whether this was the old ancestor's martial art, but doubts were doubts. Since Chun Hao had put this hat on old Master Zhao's head, then he had to admit it. He had to admit it even if he didn't want to. He had to admit it even if he lost face. On the main stage, after the referee saw that more than half of the members of the arbitration team had expressed their stance, he straightforwardly announced the result of the match. Hellion Wuzi tied with Chun Hao. Hellion Wuzi tightly bit her tender lips and stood up shakily. Her beautiful hair and clothes had become extremely messy from being entangled and rolled around with Chun Hao. What was most eye-catching was that on her bulging breasts, 2 clear bloody claw marks had actually appeared at some unknown time. Even Hellion Wuzi herself didn't notice it. However, when she slowly walked down the arena, step by step, she blinded the eyes of countless admirers. Especially her fiancé, Hellion Iching. His small eyes emitted a fury that was close to exploding. Veins popped out on his face that was as sharp as a knife, and his teeth were clenched so hard that they made creaking sounds. He had always had a cold and unyielding character and would never easily show his feelings on his face. However, at this time, he was unable to conceal it no matter what, nor did he want to conceal it. Hellion Wuzi was his fiancée, but unexpectedly, Li Ran and the others could treat Chun Hao's style of fighting as a defensive ultimate art. But how could he? How could it be possible? His fiancée that he hadn't even touched, the woman that he loved deeply, was actually entangled, rolled around, and attacked by another man. Was this something that a man could tolerate? Little Wu, I will kill him for you. Hellion Iching stared at Hellion Wuzi's pale and expressionless face and said word by word. At the same time, he extended his hand, wanting to support Hellion Wuzi, who was on the verge of collapse. However, he was stopped by Hellion Wuzi with a wave of her hand. Senior sister, take me back. Hellion Wuzi's originally ethereal and beautiful voice, although still pleasant to the ears, seemed to have lost all vitality. The woman who was called Senior Sister looked at Hellion Iching and seemed to hesitate slightly. However, she still hugged Hellion Wuzi affectionately. Her figure flashed, and she quickly left. No one knew what Hellion Iching was feeling at this moment. However, that slightly trembling body, that flushed face, that vicious and humiliated gaze seemed to be even more intense than when he was staring at Chun Hao. Almost at the same time, Xiao Mei, whose face was slightly red, carried Chun Hao, who was even more miserable than Hellion Wuzi. Under the gazes of countless people, they quickly left the martial arts arena. The battle continued. However, perhaps because the battle between Chun Hao and Hellion Wuzi was too exciting, What should have been a very exciting battle seemed to have lost its flavor in the eyes of the crowd. Xiao Jihan, who had been proud of himself for 2 days, once again had a gloomy and bitter expression on his face. He was just short of tears. What kind of world was this? After being defeated time and time again, he became stronger and stronger, just as he was proud of himself. It happened again. Was there an end to it? Was there still justice? He had just become a grade 8 martial master, and he had become a grade 4 martial master. So what if he changed? He was just a small grade 4 martial master. However, a grade 4 martial master could actually be on par with a grade 8 martial master. Moreover, it was a grade 8 martial master that he admired and had no confidence in defeating. Chun Hao, whose mouth was full of dirty blood, closed his eyes slightly, enduring the exhaustion and piercing pain all over his body. Although the golden snake coiling hand had locked onto Hellion Woozy, the huge gap between their realms still gave Chun Hao a huge pressure. The completely crazy Hellion Woozy was like a wild horse that could not be tamed. Chun Hao used all of his methods and strength, but in the end, he could only barely suppress her and was unable to tame her. It even caused him to be exhausted and heavily injured. The faint fragrance of Xiao Mei's body that entered his nostrils, as well as that soft embrace, actually became Chun Hao's pain-relieving medicine at this moment, especially when he thought about the battle with Hellion Woozy halfway through, when he felt that he couldn't take it anymore and had no choice but to use the great art of mind confusion, the softness, charm, and gentleness that passed into his hands, and all sorts of wonderful feelings made Chun Hao's cold and unfeeling state of mind that was as firm as a boulder, a little bit messed up, a messy feeling. It seemed very good. Junior, just when Chun Hao was immersed in the good feeling of being messy, Xiao Mei, who was hugging him and moving forward quickly and steadily, suddenly called out. Chun Hao was immediately startled awake. The foam-like mess immediately vanished like smoke into thin air. He opened his eyes and looked at Xiao Mei's not very beautiful, but very pleasing to the eye and very charming little face. Victory, is it really that important? Do you know that you are gambling with your own life? If at the beginning you didn't entangle with me, do you know what the consequences would be? Senior has already told you that your performance is already very, very good. It has already far exceeded everyone's expectations. It's enough, it's really enough. Even if you can't enter the top 10, so what? Our Xiao family is already proud and elated, Xiao Mei said. Chun Hao stared at Xiao Mei. Xiao Mei didn't avoid his gaze at all. Xiao Mei felt that if Chun Hao didn't accept her, there would be a day when he would pay a heavy price for his personality. After the two looked at each other for a few seconds, Chun Hao grinned. His deep black eyes avoided Xiao Mei's gaze, but he narrowed them slightly and said, "Victory or defeat is not important to me. Then why are you still risking your life? Is there?" Chun Hao smiled slightly and asked back. He didn't explain too much and continued. "I know that Senior is worried about me, but as long as there is a trace of hope, I will never allow myself to fail. A martial artist should be courageous and diligent, with the will to forge ahead. If one is overly calculative and fearful, how can one challenge one's limits and surpass oneself? Doing something only when one has a 10% chance of success is meaningless. We don't have to bring shame and destruction to ourselves without any chance of success. But as long as there is a 10% chance of victory, we will fight. We will use all our strength to firmly grasp that 10% chance of victory in our hands." Chun Hao's stubborn gaze, firm voice, and especially the words that attacked one's soul left Xiao Mei speechless once again. Besides, Xiao Jihan is already an 8th grade martial master, so I don't want to give up the training before the life and death battle. Only by fighting, by surpassing one's limits and filled with danger, can I quickly improve. So I must use all my strength to fight with Hellion Woozy. Haha, although I didn't win against her, I didn't lose either. It can be considered a success. Chun Hao's blood-stained face revealed a brilliant smile, and his voice softened. Xiao Mei stared blankly for a moment before curling her lips and saying, "It's all your reasoning. I I really don't know where you get these great principles from. Do as you please. Senior, you're so reserved. What's reserved? You're clearly convinced. Why do you have to be convinced in your heart and not in your mouth? If you show it, I'll be happy to. Hey, who's convinced by you? Xiaomei blushed and spat. It's fine if you don't admit it, as long as I understand. However, Senior, you can't copy what I just said because I'm different from you. You have to have at least 50% confidence. Otherwise, don't do it. Oh, you're worried about me? You can say that. Other than my family, there aren't many people who can make me worry. You're very lucky to be one of them, Chunhao said proudly with a sunny smile on his face. It was a pity that it was ruined beyond recognition by the bloodstains at the corner of his mouth and face. However, Chunhao's mood was indeed very good at this moment. The naive youth of the past wouldn't have said such words, and the arrogant him would have disdained to say them. However, after the fusion, because of Xiaomei's heartfelt care for him, he said them out loud. It was heartwarming, but still filled with arrogance. Chunhao knew that the current him was no longer any of his past selves. Instead, he had merged the characteristics of two people and was a brand new him. When he faced Helian Wuzi, he had a deep understanding of the previous Chunhao wouldn't have hesitated to kill because Helian Wuzi was only competing with him. Even if Helian Wuzi wanted to use the water attribute energy of the 5 elements to shatter his Dantian, he wouldn't have any killing intent because he was the one who molested her first. If it was any other girl, they wouldn't be able to tolerate it. However, the previous Earth Madman would definitely kill him. However, he hesitated and didn't kill him in the end. Let me help you heal your injuries? When Xiaomei brought Chunhao back to the Xiao family's encampment, she said to Chunhao, "No need. I still have pills, so it won't be a problem. I'll definitely be full of energy tomorrow." "All right then, I'll help you, guard. Quickly go in." Chunhao responded. His gaze suddenly looked at the empty door and said, "Chief Instructor, thank you." Xiaomei was slightly surprised. Cough, cough. Xiao Guan, who always had a cold face, awkwardly coughed twice. His figure flashed and appeared in front of the two. He looked at Chunhao with bright eyes and said, "You're indeed born with keen sixth sense. Are you really okay?" "I'm really fine," Chunhao said. "That's good. All right, what's the martial art you used today called?" "I don't know. You'll have to ask Elder Xiao." "Elder Xiao only told me, but didn't tell me the name. It's not bad. But don't use it on girls in the future. A man should be open and above board." "All right, you focus on healing. Xiaomei is here. If there's anything, just call me. I'll be nearby," Xiao Guan said and quickly left. Looking at Xiao Guan's silhouette, Xiaomei thought that it was because the head of the family and Xiao Guan valued Chunhao. However, the moment Chunhao turned and entered the cultivation room, he slightly narrowed his eyes. "P.S. Thanks for yesterday's Chuan Wuzi, passionate love carrot, Luoshi. Thanks to his 13 friends, Imo Qingyi, dreaming, is already dead, fish that can't really swim, harmless donkey, Hong Meng tree, tadpoles in the sea, raging fire like ice, wind blows rain, maple is not night, blue dome. Also, if you've seen it, please add it to your collection, recommend it, etc. Thank you." Chapter 52. Time flowed like water, and in the blink of an eye, today's competition had already ended. The curtain of night quietly came, and the bustling cloud state city lit up with specks of light. In the cultivation room, Chunhao sat cross-legged. His entire body was enveloped in a dense qi that was like water ripples, causing his figure to look as if it was constantly twisting and changing. If Elder Xiao and Xiao Ding were here, they would definitely be indescribably shocked. Huff! Right at this moment, Chunhao slowly opened his eyes. His pair of eyes flickered with a faint trace of pleasant surprise, and he let out a long breath. Profound ice qi, the derivative energy of the water attribute of the 5 elements. It's probably because I comprehended the profound ice qi that I was able to easily comprehend the water attribute energy because of Helian Wuzi, Chun Hao gazed at the dense qi that was currently slowly merging into his dantian and muttered to himself. This dense qi wasn't origin power, nor was it the profound ice qi that Chun Hao had comprehended. It was the water attribute energy. Even Chun Hao didn't expect that the battle with Hellion Wuzi would actually allow him to obtain such a huge harvest. Merely through the trace of water attribute energy that Hellion Wuzi had left in his dantian, he was able to comprehend it. Moreover, it naturally merged with the profound ice qi. Following Chun Hao's thoughts, the two types of energy that were originally of the same origin could actually be converted at will. What made Chun Hao even more pleasantly surprised was that this kind of gentle, and nourishing water attribute energy possessed an extremely shocking healing effect. In less than 4 hours, all the injuries on Chun Hao's body had completely disappeared. Moreover, Chun Hao clearly felt that there was a trace of subtle change in his state of mind. It was as if his senses towards the energy of heaven and earth had become even more sensitive. With every breath he took, he could sense the faint water attribute energy. This kind of feeling was very wonderful. It made Chun Hao's body and mind feel as if they had merged into heaven and earth, and he could feel the pulse of heaven and earth. Unknowingly, a trace of understanding appeared in Chun Hao's heart. Bang! Without any warning, Chun Hao struck out with his palm. The fiery red and violent Yuan Qi instantly surged out. But it was only for a moment, as if it had turned into a nimble and gentle flame. Its speed instantly slowed down. It was like a gentle breeze blowing over the surface of the water, gently hitting the solid rock wall, seemingly without any destructive power. But at this moment, Chun Hao's palm suddenly trembled. Boom! The gentle waves suddenly turned into roiling waves of anger, fiercely slamming against the stone wall. Immediately, stone fragments swirled in the air. The entire training room violently shook several times following Chun Hao's palm. Junior brother Xiao Mei, who was sitting cross-legged on Chun Hao's bed, felt the huge commotion coming from the cultivation room. She immediately pushed open the door to the cultivation room. When she saw the spirited Chun Hao, she said in surprise, "Your injuries have healed?" "More or less. I'll definitely be fine tomorrow. I think you'll be fine now." Xiao Mei stared at the stone fragments that had yet to scatter, as well as the deep palm print on the wall. Her charming eyes carried a trace of surprise as she said this. Low key. Senior sister, they should be back. Let's go eat, you support me." Xiao Mei curled her lips, but still held onto Chun Hao's arm. The more she interacted with him, the more Xiao Mei felt that Chun Hao's astonishing talent, especially the talent of his physical body. It was far beyond what ordinary people could reach. Xiao Mei naturally understood Chun Hao's meaning, so she could only follow along with this guy's act. Of course, she was quite satisfied that Chun Hao didn't act in front of her. "Awesome brother, you my idol. Hellion Wuzi was even taken care of by you. You're really too awesome." When Chun Hao and Xiao Mei rushed to the dining room, Xiao Jishan, this boorish man, had a face full of admiration and envy as he grabbed Chun Hao's shoulder and praised him. "Xiang Hao, you're the best." He, Lil Ling, and the other girls also did not hesitate to surround him and praise him. The taciturn Xiao Jifei's eyes also shone with admiration. Some of the inner disciples of the Xiao family also came over and asked about Chun Hao's injuries. Unlike Chun Hao, who was like the moon surrounded by stars, Xiao Jihan, who also won, had a gloomy face. Only a few followers were by his side, and all of them were gloomy. "Xiang Hao, are your injuries better?" At this moment, Xiao Ding walked in. After seeing Chun Hao, his face shone with joy and undisguised concern as he asked this. Everyone immediately dispersed obediently and went to their seats. "I'm better. Thank you for your concern, Patriarch." "That's good. Although you tied with Hellion Wuzi today, it was purely a fluke. In future battles, others will be wary of that secret technique of yours. Don't take any more risks." "Yes," Chun Hao replied. While Chun Hao and the others were eating, in the City Lord's mansion Master Li Ran's room, Li Ran was sitting on both sides of a chessboard with a smile on his face. It's been 10 years, 1 month, and 8 days since we last met. I didn't expect Brother Xiao to be even more outstanding than before. The secret to longevity is indeed worthy of its reputation. The old man sitting opposite Li Ran was none other than the Xiao family's ancestor, Elder Xiao. Brotherly, you have a good memory. No matter how strong the secret to longevity is, it can't compare to your spiritual cultivation sutra. Hee. Tell me, you're holed up in that place, refusing to come even when you're called out. You definitely don't visit without a reason, right? Could it be for that little fellow, Xianghao? You don't have to hide it, I just happened to discover. Mysterious ice chi. Hee. I think he comprehended it in your elemental spirit cave. This little fellow is more powerful than you think. Li Ran saw Elder Zhao's stunned expression when he mentioned Chen Hao, so he continued with a smile. Brother Li, how did you discover it? How is it more powerful than I thought? Elder Xiao asked in surprise. I'm at least a 7th grade spiritual sage. Is it strange that I discovered it? You don't have to worry. Other than me, no one else will discover it. As for why I said he's more powerful than you think, that's because this little fellow's innate psychokinesis is comparable to a spiritual sage. What? How is that possible? Elder Xiao was so shocked that he almost jumped up when he heard Li Ran's words. I also think it's impossible, but that's the truth. Li Ran frowned. Martial artists and spiritual sages, although different paths lead to the same goal, there's still a huge difference. Furthermore, before reaching the martial saint level, they're like fire and water. If this little fellow hadn't started cultivating as a martial artist, it wouldn't be strange. However, he's already at the martial master level. How can his innate psychokinesis still exist? Innate psychokinesis was the spiritual root that Elder Xiao had mentioned to Chen Hao before. Everyone was born with psychokinesis, but there were strong and weak ones. Only when one's psychokinesis reached a certain level could one be called a person with spiritual roots. When this kind of person started cultivating as a martial artist, the tempering of their physical body would not be able to erase their psychokinesis. They would only be able to temporarily force it into the depths of their brain, which was also the upper dantian. When they stepped into the martial ancestor level and had perfect control over their Yuan Li, they would be able to start tempering the most mysterious part of their brain. At that time, the innate psychokinesis hidden in their brain would be of great use. As for martial artists who didn't have spiritual roots, there were people who were born with weaker psychokinesis. Once they started cultivating as a martial artist, their psychokinesis would be too weak and would be erased by the sliver of Yuan Li that entered their brain. Therefore, it was impossible for this kind of person to temper the most mysterious part of the human body, the brain. However, even though Chen Hao had started cultivating as a martial artist, his innate psychokinesis wasn't forced into the depths of his brain. Instead, it could be displayed with his mind. Elder Xiao wasn't the only one who was shocked. Even Li Ran, who was a spiritual sage, found it unbelievable. How long did he last during the spiritual roots test? Li Ran asked as he stared at Elder Xiao. About 4 hours? 4 hours? Li Ran frowned slightly and said, he's not considered very strong. He barely met the requirements to become a spiritual sage. This is really strange. Could it be that when he tempered his physical body, his psychokinesis could also increase on its own? Li Ran and Elder Xiao really couldn't figure it out, and it was impossible for them to figure it out. Although Chen Hao's physical body was strong in the past, he was still an ordinary youth. It was only because of his childhood experiences and the obsession in his heart that he possessed a psychokinesis that surpassed ordinary people. However, that kind of psychokinesis was considered an extremely ordinary existence compared to the requirements to become a spiritual sage. However, the current Chen Hao wasn't the simple youth he used to be. He was the fusion of two souls. It was also because of the soul fusion that almost tore the soul apart, as well as the mysterious fusion, that there was today's Chen Hao. This Elder Xiao was speechless. He had to admit that Li Ran's discovery was really too shocking for him. Brother Xiao, tell me what you want first. I think it's definitely not a small matter. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to look for me. However, as long as I can help, I will definitely help you. However, I knew you wouldn't lose out. Elder Xiao said. However what? Tell me. Haha, give that little fellow to me. Li Ran laughed lightly and immediately demanded an exorbitant price. What? You're dreaming. Li Ran, we've been friends for so many years. Don't tell me you want to extort me? All right, since you've said this, I'll take a step back. We'll nurture this little fellow together. How about that? In name, he's a member of your Xiao family. Do as you see fit. If you agree, tell me what you want. I guarantee that I'll do my best to do it. If you don't agree, leave the money for the tea. It's a total of 3 copper coins, and you can leave. Li Ran stared at Elder Xiao and said unquestionably, why don't you go rob a bank? You want me to pay 3 copper coins for a mouthful of inferior tea? Elder Xiao was so angry that he immediately pointed at Li Ran's nose and said, if this scene was seen by the cultivators in Cloud State City, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall to the ground. One had to know that these 2 people were like gods in the eyes of the cultivators in Cloud State. Especially Li Ran. He was the undisputed #1 expert. But now, these 2 respected figures were more like old men haggling in the market. Ready to pay for the tea? Seeing Elder Xiao's appearance, Li Ran smiled slightly and said indifferently, as if he didn't care. You win. Elder Xiao gloomily sat down again and glared at Li Ran. He finished the tea in his cup in one gulp, and just as he put down the cup, under the control of Li Ran's telekinesis, the teapot in front of him was filled to the brim. 6 copper coins. Chapter 53. It's that serious? When Elder Xiao told him that Xiao Jihan's family was the Dongfang family, one of the 3 major families in the Jinyuan kingdom, as well as the Dongfang family's attempt to take over the Xiao family's elemental spirit cave, Li Ran frowned. Li Ran, you don't have to do this with me, okay? If you can help me settle this, I'll give you half of that kid. He'll be the Xiao family's in name, but he can also be your guild of intentions. Do as you see fit. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't deal with this matter, I wouldn't want to see a sanctimonious person like you for the rest of my life. Elder Xiao said without leaving any face for him. Cough, cough. Li Ran's face turned red. Xiao, can you not say such nasty things? This matter is really serious. The Dongfang family. They're just characters abandoned by the Dongfang family. How can the Dongfang family scheme over a mere elemental spirit cave? They can just come and take it. That's true, but they've already climbed up the Dongfang family tree. As long as the Dongfang family comes and wants to take over the elemental spirit cave and cripple Xiao Ding and you'll resist, right? Destroy them? After destroying them, they'll pull out an even stronger existence. What will happen in the end? Li Ran asked. Do I need you to tell me that? Otherwise, why would I look for you? Elder Xiao said. Seeing that Li Ran was still frowning, he hesitated and said, is it really difficult? Elder Xiao knew that Li Ran was not only the city lord of Cloud State City, but also the #1 expert in Cloud State. Most importantly, he had another identity. He was the president of the Guild of Intentions stationed in Cloud State City. Without this identity, Elder Xiao would not have come to find Li Ran at all, because Li Ran could not help him. Intentions were existences on the level of pandas in the Jinyuan kingdom. In terms of numbers, they could not be compared to martial artists who had simple entry requirements. However, after reaching a certain level, the various magical powers of intentions were far from what martial artists could compare to. Therefore, in any country, intentions were highly valued. However, the early-stage intentions were too weak compared to martial artists. In the cultivation world where the strong preyed on the weak, they could die at any time. It was precisely because of this that the Guild of Intentions was formed. The Intent Guild was the powerful backing of the Intent Guild. It united the small number of Intent Guild members into one. This force was an extremely powerful existence in the entire Zhenyuan kingdom. Moreover, it was heavily supported and protected by the kingdom. Let's be clear first, I'm not trying to extort you this time. Li Ran regained his serious expression. Your Shao clan's crisis this time isn't something you and I can resolve. After all, it involves the Dongfang family's family. You have to know that any family is extremely protective of their own and cares about their reputation. But when the intentions is the face of the Dong family of intentions. For the sake of their reputation, the Dongfang family will definitely take action. Sai, this is also the reason why we can't afford to offend the big families. In front of them, the weak have no reason to reason. You're right. Elder Shao frowned deeply and sighed. I've already thought of this and prepared for the worst. Actually, I didn't expect you to help me with this matter. After all, the Guild of Intentions won't go against the Dongfang family for a small family like our Shao family. I'm here to tell you that the Shao family is only the beginning. Cloud State City will probably belong to Dongfang Wankai in the future. Dongfang Wankai was Shao Jihan's father and the head of the Dongfang family, the richest family in Cloud State. Elder Shao was very clear that since he had climbed up the Dongfang family's branch and decided to use the Shao family as an example, it was impossible for him to stop. The second to act would probably be the Helian family who owned the Tianyuan cave. Fortunately, you came to find me, and fortunately, Dongfang Wankai hasn't acted yet. What do you mean? Elder Shao was startled by Li Ran's words, and he instantly asked in surprise. I hope it's not too late. Whether or not we can save the Shao family depends on that little fellow. Li Ran stared at Elder Shao and said, You mean Xiang Hao? That's right. 3 days later, the round-robin matches for the top 5 had finally ended. Helian Yiqing, Shao Jihan, Mo Yui, and Sima Jianyun, as well as the other 5 contestants who were in the top 10, had won all their matches and obtained first place in their group. Only the 7th group, Helian Wuzi and Shun Hao, were still tied for first place after the group matches ended. Both of them won all their matches in the next few matches. Everyone had already expected this when Helian Wuzi and Chun Hao fought to a draw, so it wasn't strange at all. The top 10 had become the top 11. The anticipated battle of the pinnacle had finally arrived. In the entire martial arts arena, there were 3 matches that everyone looked forward to the most. The first match was the battle between Chun Hao and Helian Wuzi. Without a doubt, the two of them who had advanced to the top 11 would have a chance to fight again. Ever since that day, when she received Chun Hao's humiliation, Helian Wuzi seemed to have changed into a different person. On her absolutely beautiful little face, there was no longer any fluctuation of emotions. No one heard her say half a word again. Her entire person seemed to have turned into a piece of 10,000-year-old ice. Even the people closest to her were infected by that kind of cold indifference that kept people 1,000 miles away and didn't dare to speak to her. One could imagine how big of a blow Chun Hao had dealt her. Therefore, one could imagine how crazy Helian Wuzi would be when she met Chun Hao again. The other match that everyone looked forward to the most was still Chun Hao's. That was the battle between Shao Jihan and Chun Hao. The life and death battle between the two of them was no longer a secret. Everyone knew that as long as they met in the martial arts competition, it would be a life and death battle between the two of them. This was destined to be an exciting and cruel battle. And the third match that everyone looked forward to the most was still related to Chun Hao. It was the battle between Helian Yiqing and Chun Hao. As Helian Wuzi's fiancé, his wife had been molested in front of tens of thousands of people. Any man wouldn't let Chun Hao off, let alone Helian Yiqing, this kind of proud son of God. Buttface Xiao Xiang Hao is really your brother. When Chun Hao and the other contestants went up to the stage to draw lots after the referee gave the order, a 12 or 13-year-old youth in the Li family's camp asked an honest-looking youth with a bruised nose and a swollen face beside him. This youth was Buttface. His nickname was due to his mother's sharp cheers during the Li family's test. This made Buttface a celebrity among the Li family's new disciples. Of course it's true. Xiao Xiang Hao is Brother Tianxi. He's my best friend, my best brother. Buttface's originally small eyes were only a slit because of his swollen face, but his voice was unquestionable and full of pride. He looked as if he was chewing how who had advanced to the top 11. Then why don't you go and look for him? No. How can I let Brother Tianci see me like this? I'll embarrass Brother Tianci. Aren't you standing up for him and taking a beating? The others were just casually talking about it. Do you have to? That won't do. I'll fight anyone who talks bad about Brother Tianci. It's time to draw lots. First update. Please add recommend. Chapter 54. Just as everyone was paying attention to Chun Hao and the others starting to draw lots, a soft laugh suddenly drifted over. The sound was very soft, but what surprised everyone was that this voice clearly entered everyone's ears. I didn't expect a small city like Cloud State to be so lively. The person who laughed said gently, but his words were condescending and domineering. It was as if the entire Cloud State was like an ant in his eyes. Almost instantly, everyone in the martial arts venue frowned. They even stopped drawing lots and looked at the entrance of the martial arts venue. There was no doubt that the person who came was an expert. To be able to suppress the entire martial arts arena so easily, perhaps other than those experts on the rostrum, there were not many people who could do it. He's finally here. Xiao Jihan, who was standing on the main stage, saw a familiar figure. All the worries in his heart were swept away. He, who had been suppressing himself for a long time, showed an unconcealable surprise and arrogance on his face. He's here? Li Ran, who was sitting in the middle of the main stage, thought to himself. His expression did not change as he slowly stood up. He glanced at Dongfang Wankai, who was following behind the young man in his 20s and the dozen or so young disciples who were full of energy and arrogance. He cupped his fist and said politely, I'm Li Ran, the Cloud State City Lord, master of the Dongfang clan. These guests are City Lord Li. This is Master Dongfang Zan of the Dongfang clan, one of the 3 great clans of the Jinyuan Kingdom. He's only 22 years old, and he's at the peak of the 9th grade martial emperor. He's only half a step away from becoming a martial emperor. You can't call us master of the Dongfang clan in front of Master Dongfang. We're just a small branch of the Dongfang clan in Cloud State. It's not worth mentioning. Dongfang Wankai did not hide his flattery. His fat face was smiling like a blooming chrysanthemum. He did not forget to flatter Li Ran as he introduced them. What? This. How is this possible? The Dongfang clan. Is it really the Dongfang clan of the 3 great clans of the kingdom? They're indeed powerful. They're already a 9th grade martial emperor at such a young age. No wonder they're so arrogant. So they're from the Dongfang clan. Dongfang Wankai is a branch of the Dongfang clan. This is unbelievable. Dongfang Wangsai's words caused an uproar in the arena. Even the influential figures in Yinzhou on the rostrum were shocked. No one would have thought that Dongfang Wankai was actually a branch of the Dongfang family in Cloud State City. No one would have thought that someone from the Dongfang family would come to the small Cloud State City. The expressions of the people who were glaring angrily at the start immediately changed completely. Even Helian Lei and the others were no exception. Who would dare to offend the Dongfang family, one of the top 3 families in the Jinyuan Kingdom? Who could afford to offend him? So it's young Master Dongfang from the Dongfang family. We're honored by your presence. Please let me in. Bring them to the VIP seats. Li Ran hurriedly said politely, but he didn't show much enthusiasm. He just asked the guard to lead him to the VIP seats. Dongfang Zan's eyes flashed with a trace of displeasure. He glanced at Li Ho but did not dare to fly into a rage. Li Ran was the lord of a city after all. Although it was just a small county, Li Ran's intentions could not be hidden from Dongfang Zan's eyes. These are the top 10 of the Yinzhou martial meet. Dongfang Zan and a dozen other people swaggered to the VIP seats not far from the rostrum. Originally, some of the VIPs didn't even need Li Ran's instructions and gave up their seats. After sitting down, Dongfang Zan's gaze slowly swept past Chun Hao and the others who had already started drawing lots. His eyes narrowed slightly and stopped at Helian Wuzi as he asked, Yes, young master. However, because there are 2 people in a group who are tied, there is now 11th place. Young master, that young lady is known as the #1 genius beauty in Yunzhou, Helian Wuzi. He, the one standing at 6th place is my son, Dongfang Han. Oh, not bad, not bad. Dongfang Zan didn't even look at Xiao Jihan. His gaze was locked onto Helian Wuzi's graceful figure as he praised in a low voice. Dongfang Wankai, this old fox, naturally understood what Dongfang Zan meant by not bad. He immediately said in a low voice, "As long as young master likes it, in this small cloud state city, no one dares to offend young master." He, leave it to me. Dongfang Zan nodded slightly. He was satisfied with Dongfang Wangsai's shrewdness and consideration. Young master, about my son, don't worry with me here. What else can happen to him? Yes, that's good, that's good. It had to be said that Dongfang Wankai did have some skills to be able to become the richest man in Yinzhou without any martial arts. He had been working for many years to climb up the Dongfang family's branch. With his powerful financial resources and excellent foresight, he finally opened the gate not long ago and took down Dongfang Zan. That was why he, who was so far away, became a branch of the Dongfang family. To be able to invite Dongfang Zan to Yinzhou, he had sold all the good things in Yinzhou. Xiao Jihan's speed of improvement in half a year, the Xiao family's elemental spirit cave, the Helian family's Tianyuan cave, and of course, the number of beauties in Yinzhou. In Dongfang Wangsai's eyes, there was no fortress that couldn't be conquered. Everyone had a weakness, and with a weakness, he could take it down. And now he had done it. The drawing of lots was completed very quickly. Chunhao was in the 5th round. The first to go up was the #1 genius of the Mo family, Mo Yui, and a relatively weaker contestant. Are you really not worried at all? Xiao Mei whispered to Chunhao as she glanced at Xiao Jihan, who had already walked to the VIP seats to greet Dongfang Zan. Is there any use in worrying? Chunhao's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness as he replied. Even Chunhao didn't expect that Xiao Jihan's family would actually climb up the Dongfang family, one of the 3 great families of the Jinyuan kingdom. What did it mean for them to rush over at this time? This made Chunhao feel an unprecedented pressure. There was no time when he craved power more than now. He needed power and needed to become stronger. Only then would he not be threatened. Only then would he be able to firmly grasp his own fate in his own hands. At this moment, even Chunhao felt that his future was bleak, especially when he saw the faces of those who had succumbed to Dongfang Zan's abuse of power. He deeply understood how powerful the Dongfang family was. This wasn't something that he could contend against at this moment. My fate is in my own hands. The words that he had said to Xiao Mei a few days ago now seemed like a joke. His only hope was actually placed on someone else. This made him, who was born with pride and arrogance, feel extremely humiliated. 3 days ago, Elder Xiao had found him alone and secretly brought him to meet Li Ran. Although the 2 of them didn't tell him the exact situation, they only told him not to feel any psychological pressure when facing Xiao Jihan. They also told him to perform well in the competition and not to hide anything. However, Chunhao knew that the severity of the situation had exceeded his expectations. He, or rather, the Xiao family, and even the entire Yinzhou were facing a huge crisis. The spearhead was directed at Xiao Jihan. Chunhao realized it, but he couldn't understand how Xiao Jihan, or rather, Xiao Jihan's family, could be so powerful. Now that he saw Dongfang Zan's appearance, Chunhao finally understood. Clap, clap, clap. Not bad at all. On the stage in the 3rd round, after Helian Wuzi blasted Sima Jianyun out of the stage with one move, Dongfang Zan actually clapped his hands and praised her from the VIP seats. So what if he was praising her? His voice was heard by everyone in the arena, especially when he looked at Helian Wuzi. His gaze carried a trace of passion that anyone could see. Helian Wuzi, right? Your aptitude is not bad. I like it very much. Come to our Dongfang family. This small Yunzhou is really a waste of your talent. What made everyone even more surprised was that Dongfang Zan actually threw out such a huge olive branch. What kind of concept was entering the Dongfang family? Although many people could see that Dongfang Zan obviously didn't have good intentions. Many people thought that if they were in his shoes, they would definitely agree immediately. Even some female disciples were no exception. They couldn't wait to replace Hellion Wuzi and agree immediately. They were even more jealous of Hellion Wuzi's looks. However, most of the gazes that looked at Dongfang Zan were filled with disdain and anger, but they didn't dare to say anything. Blatant trash. Chun Hao coldly scolded in a low voice. Xiaomei also frowned slightly. The gaze that she looked at Dongfang Zan with was obviously filled with fear, but the disdain was even stronger. As for the Hellion family's head, Hellion Lei, he frowned slightly. This guy who had always been arrogant actually swallowed his anger. Similarly, although Hellion Yiqing's fiancé was so angry that veins were popping out of his face and his entire body was trembling, he was like a tortoise withdrawing its head and enduring. It's really a fucking Ninja Turtle. The more Chen Hao looked, the angrier he got. He couldn't help but curse. Luckily, his voice wasn't loud, just when everyone was staring at Hellion Wuzi. Wanting to see what Hellion Wuzi would say, they didn't expect that Hellion Wuzi's ice-cold and emotionless face actually didn't change in the slightest. Her footsteps didn't even slow down in the slightest. She walked down the stage just like that, as if she didn't hear Dongfang Zan's words at all, completely treating them as farts. However, wherever Hellion Wuzi passed, it was as if it had instantly entered winter. The dense, icy aura caused the air around her to distort. Her long hair danced without wind. Everyone could see that it wasn't that Hellion Wuzi didn't hear it, but that she chose to blatantly ignore it. Dongfang Zan frowned slightly, but the heat in his eyes became even stronger. Young master, you probably don't know, but Hellion Wuzi is the fiancée of the Hellion family's young master. She probably can't help it. Moreover, it said that she was provoked by Xiao Xianghao 2 days ago in the competition and became a bit abnormal. Dongfang Wangkai didn't miss the opportunity to say. The words that he said not only stabbed the Hellion family, but also stabbed Chun Hao. Haha, this is even more interesting. I like it. Dongfang Zan narrowed his eyes and was already staring at Hellion Wuzi. His gaze became even more heated as he spoke. Even he didn't think that the small Yunzhou would actually have such a stunning beauty. He felt that he was really too lucky to come here this time. Under the excitement, he actually didn't hide his lustful heart anymore. This caused the majority of the people in the martial arts arena, especially Hellion Wuzi's supporters, to rage in their hearts. At this moment, Li Ran, who was originally amiable, suddenly let out a cold snort. A majestic spiritual energy instantly enveloped the area. His eyes looked towards Dongfang Zan and said, "Young Master Dongfang, we Yunzhou people respect you as a disciple of the Dongfang family, but we don't welcome scum like you. I believe that if your Dongfang family knows that you've tarnished the family's reputation, they won't let you off. Get out." Immediately, Hua, the usually amiable Li Ran, suddenly faced Dongfang Zan directly and said such refreshing words. Instantly, the entire martial arts arena exploded into an uproar. What did you say? Dongfang Zan also didn't think that there would be someone in the small Yunzhou who dared to challenge him. Even if he was dead, even Li Ran would turn a blind eye to him. Hence, after hearing Li Ran's words, this arrogant fellow instantly stood up like a mad dog whose tail had been stepped on. He pointed at Li Ran and roared sharply. Second update. Please help me collect this if you don't have a collection. Please recommend it. Thank you. Chapter 55. I said, I don't welcome scum like you who tarnishes the Dongfang family's reputation. Get out. Li Ran said coldly. Under his rage, the pressure of his mental energy made everyone feel as if they couldn't breathe. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on their hearts. Ha! Dongfang Zan was so angry that he started laughing. His eyes stared fiercely at Li Ran and said, You, a little city lord, actually dare to tell this young master to get out? You actually dare to say that this young master is the scum of the Dongfang family? Ha! You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even if I, Dongfang Zan, am the scum of the Dongfang family, it should be said by the people of the Dongfang family. Who do you think you are? Isn't she just a little beauty? This young master has taken a liking to her. It's fine if you don't give her to me, but you actually dare to stop me? Ha ha, old man, aren't you just a little emperor of will? You don't even put our Dongfang family in your eyes. You really have monstrous guts. Get out. Li Ran was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. His tyrannical, mental energy suddenly burst out from his body. He coldly stared at Dongfang Zan and said again, without a doubt, if it wasn't for Dongfang Zan's identity, Li Ran would have definitely smashed his face into pieces with a punch. What? You want to fight? Come hit me. Ha! Come hit me. This young master wants to see what you dare to do to me. Ha ha, come hit me here, I'm so scared. Dongfang Zan was a 9th rank martial king. In the Cloud State City, he could definitely be considered an expert on the same level as Xiao Ding and the other family heads. However, in front of Li Ran, this divine will, he was nothing. But in front of the enraged Li Ran, he didn't hold back at all. As he spoke, he even stood up and stretched his face closer to Li Ran, displaying the shamelessness of a hedonistic disciple to the extreme. Ha! City Lord Li, you're in the wrong here. People shouldn't get muddle-headed as they get older and shouldn't let their emotions affect their decisions. Young Master is a magnanimous person. As long as the people of Yunzhou perform well, he won't be calculative. It's a great blessing for Helian Wuzi to enter the Dongfang clan. Also, the Yuan Spirit Cave of the Shao clan and the Tianyuan Cave of the Helian clan. Young Master is also interested in the Shao clan's Yuan Spirit Cave and the Shao clan's Tianyuan Cave. Oh right, the disciple of the Shao clan called Shao Xianghao. Kill him too. Dongfang Wankai saw that Li Ran was so angry that his face was twitching, but he didn't dare to touch Dongfang Zan. He sighed in his heart. It was awesome to have a backer. Dongfang Zan was only a 9th grade martial king, but the #1 expert of Yunzhou City, the Emperor of Intentions, Li Ran, could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. Li Ran's expression became more and more unsightly. Originally, he had already discussed with old Xiao about how to deal with this. As long as he endured for a few days and waited for the big shots of the Intentions Guild to arrive, everything would be easily settled as long as they took a fancy to Chun Hao. However, the news had already spread for 4 days, and the big shots of the Intentions Guild still hadn't arrived. Instead, Dongfang Zan arrived first. It was fine if he arrived first. It was fine if he was arrogant. It was fine if he could tolerate it. However, in front of all the cultivators of Yunzhou, he actually dared to flirt with Helian Wuzi without any taboo. He completely treated the people of Yunzhou as air. How could Li Ran, the city lord, put his face? How could he tolerate it? However, looking at Dongfang Zan's arrogant face, Li Ran couldn't back down. The instigator, Dongfang Wankai, made Li Ran want to cut him into pieces. However, could Li Ran do it? Fight. Li Ran knew that once he made a move, the Intentions Guild would have to pay a much higher price to help him. Although the Intentions Guild was rare, and Chun Hao's strange talent of combining intent and martial arts was unheard of, what if the Intentions Guild didn't care about this talent? The consequences would be unimaginable. Do you want me to die? Just when Li Ran was filled with righteous indignation and didn't know what to do, a cold voice suddenly sounded from the edge of the main stage. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clearly heard by the people who had gathered their Dantian's origin energy. Xianghao. Xiao Mei was so frightened that she immediately grabbed Chun Hao's wrist. Chun Hao held Xiao Mei's wrist tightly. His handsome face was filled with arrogance and coldness. Boom! Before Xiao Mei could stop him, Chun Hao suddenly stepped on the ground and shot up into the sky. He charged towards Dongfang Zan and Dongfang Wankai at an unbelievable speed. Chun Hao's sudden action was out of everyone's expectations. However, he didn't give them time to be shocked. His speed was too fast, so fast that most of them couldn't even see Chun Hao's figure clearly. Even Chun Hao himself didn't know why. When Dongfang Wankai said all the conditions to threaten Li Ran, He couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. He felt as though he was about to be burned. A strong desire exploded in the core of his mind. At that moment, he felt as though he was about to explode. His body was suddenly filled with boundless energy. The entire world seemed to have frozen, and time seemed to have stopped. Kill, 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 kill. Dongfang Wangsai's despicable and shameless face had completely ignited the killing intent in Chun Hao's heart. It was even more intense than Dongfang Zan's. At least Dongfang Zan was still a member of the Dongfang family. He had the right to be arrogant. However, Dongfang Wangsai's disgusting face that wanted to stir up trouble with his rotten mouth and despicable methods, especially when he said that he would kill him, made Chun Hao burn with anger. Boom! Maybe it was because Chun Hao's actions were too unexpected, or maybe it was because they were shocked by Chun Hao's arrogant aura, or maybe it was because Chun Hao's speed was too fast. In any case, even Li Ran, the mental saint, didn't have time to react. A red and white sticky substance appeared in front of everyone's eyes, accompanied by a dull explosion. The 9th grade martial king Dongfang Zan was shocked by Chun Hao's aura. His face was covered in blood and brain matter, and he quickly retreated. A fat and headless body was like a kite with a broken string. It drew a beautiful arc and landed on the ground with a bang. Screams and screams suddenly erupted at this moment. Some of the younger female disciples even covered their mouths in fright. Hellion Wuzi's emotionless eyes actually shone with a strange splendor at this moment. She stared blankly at the youth who humiliated her. Father, Xiao Jihan, who was extremely proud of himself, suddenly screamed in anger and grief. He charged towards the headless body. You're courting death. Dongfang Zan, whose face was pale, finally regained his senses. With a loud shout, he attacked Chun Hao with violent origin power. Dongfang Zan was really frightened. A dignified 9th grade martial king was actually frightened by a mere martial master like Chun Hao. He was so frightened that he only thought of dodging and didn't have any consciousness to save Dongfang Wankai, who was right beside him. Stop! Li Ran, who had also just regained his senses, suddenly shouted and grabbed at the void. Suddenly, a sharp crystal light condensed out of thin air, and with a buzzing sound, it blasted towards Dongfang Zan as fast as lightning. Boom! How could Dongfang Zan, who was only a 9th grade martial king, block the anxious attack of a #1 expert in Yinzhou, who was also a 7th grade martial emperor? Although they were far apart, Li Ran still sent Dongfang Zan flying with one move. Brat, are you crazy? After sending out that attack, Li Ran's body was like lightning. Boundless mental energy covered Chun Hao and pulled back Chun Hao, who seemed to have gone crazy. However, even Li Ran's heart trembled when he saw the fury in Chun Hao's eyes. How could the aura of a 4th grade martial master reach such a frightening level? Aura was one of the most proficient methods of intent. Boundless mental energy pressure was the best way to intimidate the opponent. However, Li Ran could clearly feel that the arrogant aura that Chun Hao had just emitted was not mental energy. Instead, it was an aura that came from his bones and soul. An aura that didn't contain any energy, a pure aura. Good. Ha ha ha. Just at this moment, a loud and clear voice of an old man suddenly resounded in the sky. An earth-shattering pressure rolled in, causing the entire martial arts arena to be in an uproar. Immediately, everyone looked towards the sky in fear. Even the furious Dongfang Zan, Chun Hao, who seemed to have lost his mind, and Xiao Jihan, who was similarly driven mad by the sudden change of events, all looked towards the sky without exception. A figure emitting boundless majesty appeared. He had white hair and a white beard, and he had the demeanor of an immortal. His eyes were shining with a bright light that made people not dare to look at him directly. Just his eyes were enough to make the sun lose its splendor behind this figure. Several young male and female disciples were also flying in the sky. Their gazes were all locked onto Chun Hao without exception. President? The instant Li Ran saw the old man, his voice trembled and he stuttered as he called out. Immediately after, he knelt on the ground and said with incomparable excitement, "Subordinate Li Ran of Yunzhou pays his respects to the president." When Dongfang Zhan saw the person who had come, his face instantly turned extremely ugly. He tightly clenched his fists, but he didn't dare to do anything else. "Stand up." An invisible force gently lifted Li Ran up. The old man looked at Chun Hao and said, "Little fellow, you are the disciple of the Shao family, Shao Xianghao, right?" First update. This chapter has been written and deleted, and it took me a long time to finish it. Without a draft, it's really hard to set the update time to a small range. Thanks to yesterday's Chuan Liang Wu Zi, passionate love carrot, emo, xie yi, mu xie yi. Tragedy? Wind blows the rain, tadpoles in the sea, plants versus zombies, maple farewell night, and purple moon orchid. Also, student Wu Chen, 369, you're also an old reader who supports Dark Mountain. You should know what a new book needs. The review you posted, if it was an ordinary person, would definitely have been banned and deleted because it would affect the students who have not started reading it yet. Therefore, I only blocked the post from you. Is there a need to spend money to review Black Raven Mountain? This book is not the kind of novel that will explode with excitement right from the start. It's fine if you don't like it, but as an old reader, is there really a need for you to directly change the rating from 10 to 9? 8. It's not easy for every author. Dark Mountain, who writes at a tortoise's speed, is even more difficult. I sincerely hope that if you like it, you can stay and support it. If you don't like it, you can quietly leave. This is also a form of support for the author. A book cannot possibly suit everyone's taste. I hope that you can understand more. Also, there are often female genes in the book review section. How can there be a man? How can the deepest sea on Earth be 50,000 meters deep? I only want to say that this book is a fantasy. Li Yuan's time on Earth is also the future. Genes are just a general concept. If you can't do it now, does it mean you can't do it in the future? The word clone is indeed wrong. Dark Mountain has already changed it. As for the deep sea trench, please don't use the depth of the trench found now to measure the future. What is the radius of Earth? 6,000 kilometers, which is about 6 million meters. There are still countless areas in the ocean that have not been explored. 50,000 meters? I hope that in the future, such book reviews will not appear again. Otherwise, I will delete the ban. If it affects other people's reading, it will also affect our results. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 56. Yes, Senior. Chun Hao's expression was solemn, and his eyes shone with a trace of shock and fervor. He quickly withdrew his arrogant aura and cupped his fists respectfully. Very good, very good. The old man's eyes shone with a breathtaking light as he glanced at Chun Hao. He stroked his long beard and nodded repeatedly. At this moment, all eyes in the entire martial arts arena were focused on the old man, Chun Hao, and the few young disciples who came with the old man. Although most people only knew that the old man's identity was definitely unimaginably powerful from Li Ran's excited and respectful kneeling, they didn't know how powerful he was. Especially the disciples of a Shao family who didn't even know who the old man was. But there was no doubt that the aura of the old man and his few young disciples intimidated everyone with just their appearance. They didn't know how high the old man's cultivation was, but those few young disciples looked to be at most 20 years old, yet they were able to fly in the air. Just this point alone made the various patriarchs and elders of the various large clans on the rostrum blush with shame, and the most excited person was Li Ran, especially when he saw the old man look at Chun Hao approvingly and say, very good, very good. He was so excited that he was about to float. This was the president of the Jinyuan Kingdom's Guild of Intentions. Oh, what was the level of his cultivation? Peak martial sage or martial god? Li Ran didn't know. The only thing he knew was that there were no more than one person in the Jinyuan Kingdom who could match the president. In any case, Li Ran didn't expect the president to come personally. A few days ago, he just quickly reported Chun Hao's situation to the headquarters of the Guild of Intentions. As long as the headquarters sent a slightly more powerful person and took a fancy to Chun Hao, this crisis would be resolved. But he didn't expect that the important person would be so powerful that he directly reached the top. At this moment, the old man stared at Chun Hao with a smile on his face and said gently, "Little guy, are you willing to join the Guild of Intentions?" Chun Hao already had some understanding of this, and judging from Li Ran's expression, this old man should be the president of the Guild of Intentions. Facing this olive branch that was enough to make people faint, Chun Hao should immediately agree. However, his clear eyes flashed with a hint of confusion, as if he was muttering to himself. He looked at Xiao Ding, whose face was filled with excitement and whose body was trembling slightly. Chun Hao's behavior made Li Ran have the urge to ask for more money. What was this brat doing? You are the head of the Xiao clan? Fortunately, the old man did not seem to mind. Instead, he smiled and followed Chun Hao's gaze to Xiao Ding. Yes, senior. Xiao Xianghao's original name is Chun Hao. To be able to obtain senior's favor is a blessing that he and our Xiao clan have accumulated over several lifetimes. It's an extreme honor, Chun Hao, why aren't you thanking senior? Xiao Ding's face was filled with excitement, as if he was afraid that a pie would fall from the sky and fly away. He stared at Chun Hao and shouted. Xiao Ding's words were very clear. He even directly restored Chun Hao's original name without any ambiguity. Disciple Xiao Xianghao, Chun Hao greets senior. Chun Hao respectfully bowed and performed the common entrance ceremony in the cultivation world. However, Chun Hao's words were very thought-provoking. The ignorant young man naturally did not understand why Chun Hao said two names. However, Li Ran, Xiao Ding, and the other old fellows felt very comforted by Chun Hao's actions. The smile on the old man's face became even wider. No power, clan, or sect had no desire for the cultivation of their disciples. Ungrateful ingrates were the most disliked. And Chun Hao had such a performance at such a young age. It could no longer be described as simply repaying kindness. After the old man calmly accepted Chun Hao's kowtow, he stretched out his hand and held him up, saying, very good, very good. Actually, you only need to agree to join the Intent Guild. We are an organization, not a disciple. But since you and the old man have done the apprenticeship ceremony, then the old man will make an exception and accept you as a disciple. Ha! The old man's words caused the eyeballs of Li Ran and the young disciples behind the old man to almost fall to the ground. They all widened their eyes and looked at Chun Hao, who seemed to be a little depressed with envy and jealousy. Dongfang Zan, who did not utter a word and even shrunk back a little, as though he was afraid of being seen by the old man, gasped in shock. He secretly cursed the 18 generations of ancestors of Dongfang Wankai, who had already turned into a corpse. He was too F***king unlucky. Even stepping on dog *T was better than this. It was not easy to persuade that old fellow Dongfang Wankai. He was still thinking about the countless beauties and coming out to have fun, but he did not expect to meet the president of the Intent Guild in this remote corner of the mountain that even the Dongfang family did not dare to provoke. You are from the Dongfang family? Just when Dongfang Zan and his subordinates were about to sneak away, the old man suddenly looked at them, squinted his eyes, and said calmly. Dongfang Zan and his subordinates instantly felt a chill down their spine, and they had no choice but to stop. What's your name? Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, these 4 meridians. Which one do you belong to? What are you doing here? I. Dongfang Zan did not dare to raise his head under the old man's questioning, stammering as he said, President Fong, Junior, President, young master. Dongfang Zan heard that our Cloud State Martial competition was going on and happened to pass by. So he came to take a look. Right to take a look. Dongfang Zan hurriedly said, looking at Li Ran with a grateful gaze. He was very clear that if this President Fong Yuan told his ugly deeds to the clan leader, he would suffer a lot, but his future in Dongfang family would be affected. Although he did not have any future, Li Ran was someone who repaid evil with kindness. Even though he was a hedonistic young master, he did not have any thoughts of revenge. Instead, he was very grateful. All of his hatred was given to that damned pig head. If not for that pig head's enticement, he would not have come here. If he did not come here, he would not have met Fang Yuan when he was committing crimes. Oh, the old man, who was the president of the Intent Guild, Fang Yuan, looked at Li Ran, and after pondering for a while, he said, "In that case, why are you running? Is this old man very scary?" Li Ran, continue the competition. Since this old man is here, let's see if your cloud state has any talents that can be nurtured. Yes. Li Ran immediately replied excitedly, waving his hand to signal the referee to continue the competition. President Fang, Brother Li, I have some urgent matters. I will not disturb you. Goodbye. Dongfang Zhan was not in the mood to watch the competition and left with his tail between his legs. Before leaving, his gaze subtly looked at Hao Lian Wuzi, and he shook his head. He knew that he could not cause any more trouble in Cloud State. This little beauty who made his heart flutter could only be thrown to the back of his mind. Afraid of his revenge? After Dongfang Zhan and the rest left, Fang Yuan looked at Li Ran and asked, "President, this villain is hard to deal with you around. He naturally would not dare to be impudent. But if I do this, he probably won't come to Cloud State to cause trouble again." Li Ran lowered his head and said, "No wonder you have stagnated at rank 7 in 10, Emperor. There is no problem in enduring appropriately, but the necessary drive is a must. This little guy can kill anyone who tries to sow discord in front of a rank 9 martial emperor. Hee. This spirit, you don't have it. Is it dangerous?" But he did it. What did he ask for? His thoughts were clear. He is clearly someone you hate, but you still want to help him. How can you be clear? Especially when you are the Intent Emperor. The old man said slowly. His voice was soft and calm. However, these few short sentences caused Li Ran to break out in cold sweat. Every word attacked Li Ran's nerves. The barrier that had been locked up for so many years seemed to have been lit at this moment, causing every cell in Li Ran's body to tremble. "Thank you for your reminder, President. You don't need to blame yourself. As the city lord, you are doing this in consideration of Cloud State." Fang Yuan looked at Li Ran's expression and nodded, slightly gratified. Fourth match, Xiao Jihan against Helian Yiqing. When a referee announced the list of contestants, Helian Yiqing immediately jumped onto the stage. Everyone's gazes also landed on Xiao Jihan. Xiao Jihan was seen kneeling beside the headless corpse with a horrifying expression on his face. He was holding his severed neck as if he was playing with it. It was as if he couldn't hear anyone as he muttered to himself in a mournful voice, "Father, didn't you say you wanted me to dominate Cloud State? Xiao clan is ours. Helian clan is ours. We are not only the richest clan, we are also the #1 martial arts clan. We don't need to curry favor with them anymore. Father, I did really well. I became Xiao clan's #1 genius, and for 3 years, I was constantly trying to curry favor with Xiao Ding's precious daughter. I did really well. Xiao Bo, that old lecher, was completely bought over by us. As long as there is a genius disciple who is even a little bit of a threat, I can play with him until he is crippled. Why? Everything was in my hands. Why is it over? Father, you are really trash. Why did you teach me to play tricks? With my talent, I went from rank 7 martial artist to rank 8 martial master in half a year. What can I do? But now it's all over." Unknowingly, Xiao Jian had already arrived beside Xiao Jihan. Her face was pale and covered in tears, but she stared at Xiao Jihan in a daze. At this moment, when Xiao Jihan said it himself, she finally understood that what her father, Old Man Xiao, Chun Hao, and the others had said was true. She did not hate Xiao Jihan. She only hated herself for being too naive. Boom! A resplendent scarlet light flashed, and Xiao Jihan's hand suddenly turned scarlet red. Chi. What made everyone dumbfounded was that Xiao Jihan actually seemed to have gone mad as he used his hand, which was filled with essence force, to repeatedly stab his father's fat corpse. After stabbing it a few times, pooh! Screams rang out one after another. Even Chun Hao could not help but narrow his eyes. No one expected Xiao Jihan to stab his own throat and end his life with his own hands. P.S. Please add this to your collection and recommend. Thank you. Chapter 57. He deserved it. He deserved it. I really couldn't tell how ambitious he was. It's too easy for someone like him to die just like that. Yeah, he's really sinister. Luckily, he was discovered. Didn't you see his father's face? Damn it, Xiang Hao, oh no, Chen Hao, it's too good to kill him. Yeah, it's too satisfying. However, if this big shot doesn't appear, I'm afraid our cloud state will really be in a mess because of this father and son. Seeing that Xiao Jihan actually chose to commit suicide, many people felt that it was too easy for him to die, especially when they thought of Dongfang Wangsai's face just now and Xiao Jihan's words just now. They felt that it was not enough to vent their anger. Isn't the Xiao Bo he's talking about the elder on the rostrum? With the death of an important person, it naturally shifted to a secondary role. Many people, especially the Xiao clan disciples, looked at the sixth elder with disdain and indignation. However, to everyone's surprise, the sixth elder, Xiao Bo, actually closed his eyes and remained motionless. Black blood was still flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Xiao Ding had actually seen it long ago. Although he hated Xiao Bo for being blinded by greed and would definitely execute him according to the clan rules, he still felt sad in his heart. Xiao Jihan's talent was outstanding, and he had always been the focus of the Xiao clan's nurturing. Xiao Bo was a direct descendant of the Xiao clan and was Xiao Ding's uncle. Both of them chose to commit suicide. To Xiao Ding, this kind of ending was probably the most relaxing for him. Carry them out and bury them. I hope all the disciples present will take this as a warning. Cultivators should have the spirit of a cultivator. Blinded by greed and playing tricks is ultimately playing with fire and digging one's own grave. Li Ran waved his hand at the guards of the city lord's mansion and said in a deep voice, "The competition continues. Today, the president of our Zhen Yuan Kingdom's Entrepreneur Guild is here personally. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the cultivators of Cloud State. The president is not only the president of the Entrepreneur Guild, but he also has another more important identity. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not. The ranking is no longer important in this battle of the top 10. What's important is to display your true strength and talent. There's no rest today. Let's do it in one go. Participants, do your best. I hope that all of you can catch the Guildmaster's eye. That will be our Cloud Province's fortune." Li Ran continued to speak loudly. Li Ran's words immediately ignited the flames of war between Mo Yui, Helian Iching, and the other top 10 disciples. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an opportunity for the carp to leap over the Dragon Gate. Chen Hao had already taken the lead, but what about them? Everyone knew that this would be a battle that would change their lives. The ranking wasn't important. What was important was to display one's strength. As long as one could truly display one's strength and talent in a battle, it would be enough even if one couldn't continue fighting due to serious injuries. Chun Hao did not understand why President Fang Yuan valued him so much and directly took him in as a personal disciple. But he knew that to be truly valued, it would depend on his future performance. Without a doubt, the next match would be his first performance. Therefore, even Chun Hao could not let his guard down. When it came to the 5th round, Chun Hao and another peak 6th grade martial arts master jumped into the main arena at the same time. Following the referee's command, the two of them immediately started fighting. Go throw it outside the city and feed it to the dogs, yes. A few guards carried the corpses of Xiao Bo, Xiao Jihan, and the headless Dongfang Wankai out of the arena and directly threw them to the lackeys. The lackeys directly stuffed them into the carriages without even looking at them and sped out of the city. When they reached the barren land, they directly threw them into the gully where the corpses were often disposed of and quickly left. They simply did not notice that although Xiao Jihan's corpse was stiff, its temperature was completely different from Xiao Bo and Dongfang Wankai. In the winter, There was still a faint residual warmth, rumble, as the three corpses rolled down the ravine. The dead Xiao Bo and Dongfang Wankai didn't react at all. However, the stiff Xiao Jihan's hand, which seemed to have pierced into his neck, actually let go of his neck after rolling for a few meters. If anyone saw this, they would definitely widen their eyes in shock, because this was a hand that had lost all of its fingers except for its thumb. What was even more shocking was that Xiao Jihan's movements were light. With a slight smile, he controlled his rolling body to avoid hitting his head time and time again. When the lackeys who threw the corpses were far away, Xiao Jihan's corpse suddenly glowed with a slight wave of elemental energy. His rolling momentum suddenly slowed down, and he stopped beside a slightly protruding rock. Xiao Jihan, whose face, neck, and body were covered in blood, actually slowly opened his eyes. Monstrous hatred and anger shone in his eyes, as well as a trace of excitement from surviving a disaster. Suicide? Chun Hao, who destroyed everything he had and killed his father, was still alive. How could he, Xiao Jihan, commit suicide before he took his revenge? However, Xiao Jihan knew that if he had not taken a risk and used such a crazy method to deceive everyone, he would have definitely died. He did not hesitate to expose his father's and sixth elder's crimes. He did not hesitate to use his dead father's corpse to vent his anger. It was all to cover up. When he had used his fingers to gather origin power and inserted it into his father's corpse, it had felt as uncomfortable as piercing his heart. However, he had still done it. Only by doing this would he be able to make everyone think that he had gone crazy, and inhumane. Only by doing this would he be able to break his own 4 fingers inside his father's corpse. Only by doing this would he be able to deceive everyone's eyes and make everyone think that he had really inserted his hand into his own neck. He forcefully entered the tortoise breathing mode, stopped his heartbeat and breathing, and entered a state of suspended animation. Everything, it was all for the sake of survival, for the sake of revenge. One day, I, Dongfang Han, will return. Just you wait. No matter how strong you are, no matter who you are, anyone who dares to stop me will die. All of you will die. Xiao Xianghao no. Chen Hao, just you wait. Xiao Jihan's blood-stained face became extremely sinister. He bit his lips so hard that blood flowed out as he spoke sharply through the gaps of his teeth. His 4 fingers that had been cut off started to bleed again because he had used too much strength. However, he seemed to have lost all sense of pain. With a flash of his body, he dashed towards the direction of the desolate mountain range at lightning speed. Home? He no longer had a home. In less than 3 days, the Dongfang family would no longer exist in Yinzhou. Furthermore, even if there was, he could not return. He had to escape. He had to escape from the Jinyuan kingdom and escape to a more powerful kingdom. He knew that if he wanted to take revenge and avenge his humiliation, he had to escape from the Jinyuan kingdom. That old man was too strong, and Chun Hao had already acknowledged him as his master. Special note: Xiao Jihan was able to hide his death from the president and other experts. The details will be explained later. Chun Hao was overflowing with battle intent. His first opponent, a peak grade 6 martial master, was not his match at all. However, in the next few battles, Chun Hao felt extremely stifled. It was not because his opponents were too strong, but because his opponents did not give him a chance to fight to his heart's content and had already admitted defeat. What the F***CK was this? Especially when Hellion I Ching, who hated him to the bone, was still polite when he fought with him. On the contrary, other than him, the other people's battles were all intense. Climax after climax, one after another, each exciting battle overshadowed the previous one. They were truly going all out without holding anything back. After 4 consecutive battles, Chun Hao's high battle intent was immediately extinguished. Up until now, everyone had fought a total of 20 battles. Everyone had gone up 4 times. Almost everyone had performed as well as they should. Furthermore, other than Hellion I Ching, Mo Yui, Hellion Wuzi, and Chun Hao, Everyone else, including Sima Jianyun, had already suffered heavy injuries and lost their battle strength. There was no need to mention Chen Hao, but Helian Wuzi and Mo Yui made Chairman Fong Yuan nod slightly. Helian Yiqing, whose performance was not inferior to the other two, and even surpassed Mo Yui, did not attract any attention from Fong Yuan for some reason. Just as the remaining 4 people were about to draw lots, Li Ran suddenly froze. Then, he respectfully nodded slightly and stood up, saying, "Wait, the last 4 people don't need to draw lots. Chen Hao and Helian Yiqing have already fought. Mo Yui, the first round will be between you and Chen Hao." "Yes." Mo Yui, who was holding a large, heavy sword, replied at the same time as Chen Hao with a cold expression. At this time, Mo Clan's clan had repeatedly signaled Mo Yui with his eyes. He was clear of Mo Yui's character. In his eyes, other than cultivation, there was only cultivation. His EQ was extremely low, and a broken sword was more important than anything else. Even when eating or sleeping, it did not leave his side. He was even closer to his wife. Of course, he did not have a wife. From the looks of it, he did not intend to have a wife in this life. Since the start of Cloud State's martial gathering, everyone had concealed their strength. Basically, before the Battle of the Top 10, no one had used a weapon. But this brat, no matter who his opponent was, how high their cultivation was, even if it was someone he could easily deal with a wave of his hand, he would still brandish his sword at them without exception. And now, Chen Hao was chairman's disciple. Who would dare to make a move against him? Mo Clan's clan head could already tell that the chairman seemed to have a little bit of interest in Mo Yui. If Mo Yui did not know how to restrain himself, this little bit of interest would probably be erased. But what made Mo Clan's clan head hurt was that Mo Yui did not even look at him. His hand was tightly gripping the large sword that he was closer to than his wife. His eyes were only staring at Chen Hao, who was about to fight. His figure was as straight as a sword, and the battle intent on his body soared without restraint. The aura of his entire person was like a sharp, treasured sword, and actually contained a trace of sword intent. Mo Yui's fierce aura made Chen Hao, who was originally dispirited due to boredom, suddenly become energetic and hard. "Many thanks." Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shone with a bright light. He actually stared at Mo Yui and said 2 words that made everyone confused. Mo Yui frowned slightly. He did not understand what Chen Hao meant. Since he could not figure out, he let it go. He did not need to understand. Before the battle, there was only battle in his heart. Only battle. No matter if the enemy was strong or weak, he would fight with all his strength. Furthermore, although Chen Hao's realm was low, his true strength was definitely not inferior to him. Following the referee's order, Mo Yui's figure instantly flashed. Under the activation of violent Yuan Qi, he flew towards Chen Hao like a sharp sword that was thrown out of his hand. P.S. Thank you for yesterday's Chen Yu, Chuan Liang Wu Zi, Passionate Love Carrot Carrot, Xiao Feng Scent Drizzle, Mo Yui, Supervision Section 1, A Dream of Old Scenery, 145646546, 6456, People in the Spring Breeze and Drizzle, 9 friend for their support. Thank you for your evaluation votes. The evaluation votes cannot be seen in the Dark Mountain Authors platform, so will not be listed in the list. Thank you, everyone. Please recommend it, add it. Thank you. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.